This is our favorite part of the year, our budget process, and everybody's all ready and anxious to do and get everything done, aren't we? I can't hear you. Yeah. All right. It's been a great day, actually. Woke up this morning, thankful for that, thankful for everything. Sometimes we just think about what we're thankful for, and all the work that everyone does here at the Peoria Park District just makes it so great and exciting. So let's thank you all. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get started, and we're gonna see where we are here. Right now, I guess we're gonna call things to order. Roll call.
Trustee Burchey? Here. Trustee Covington? Here. Trustee Harrod? Here. Trustee Hill? Here. Trustee Montez?
Here.
Vice President Sierra?
Here.
President Johnson?
Here. Okay, it looks like everyone here. So can we take a moment of silence and do the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with the minutes. No, we're doing this. No, staff reports, none of that. New committee reports, none of that. Okay, I'm going with this here November 6th agenda. New business, tax levy, estimate for 2025 budget.
Good evening.
Hi.
This evening you have before you and in your board packages, the 2024 tax levy estimate for the 2025 budget. So this is the property tax levy to comply with Truth in Taxation Act. We need to review as a board and approve an estimated levy to ensure that we comply with the act. The levy that is before you fulfills the needs as is presented in your budget books. Again, this is just estimate. And the increase that is estimated is 4.99%. So for motion, staff recommends that you motion and approve the estimated levy.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Wait.
Oh, question, I'm sorry.
So typically, this is the estimate for the 2025 budget, correct?
Correct.
So is it, you have to forgive me because I can't, it's been a year. Do we usually approve the tax before the budget is approved?
So you're not actually approving the levy this evening. You're just approving it and acknowledging that you have reviewed the estimated levy to comply with the truth in taxation requirements. The estimated levy before you is to fulfill what's in your budget document. The actual tax levy does not get passed until after you approve the budget. So hypothetically, if there are changes to the budget, then there would be changes to what is the final levy.
Thank you. That's what I remember. So,
Yeah, no problem.
Is there a second? Question? Roll call.
Trustee Burchey? Aye. Trustee Covington?
Aye.
Trustee Harrod?
Aye.
Trustee Hill?
Aye.
Trustee Montez?
aye.
Vice President Sierra?
Aye.
President Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start now in 2025. We're gonna start and present our budget presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As we prepared for tonight, we have talked off and on about how the election might impact the mood in the room, how we present, or what we would say. I woke up today with a very strong pull to say clearly and loudly that it doesn't change a thing for the Peoria Park District. Regardless of how we frame it, our work remains the same. Our place and purpose in the communities we serve is not grounded in politics, but rather in people. We work every day to ensure that our spaces and places are consistently and clearly welcoming and accessible to all people. We are unwavering in our commitment to making our community a healthier and more vibrant place to live, work, and play. Our work is about advocating for sustainable, safe places for people, plants, and animals to do more than survive, but to thrive. Simply put, our places and programs are for everybody, and that can't and won't change. We are today the same group of passionate people focused on our Park District impact as we were yesterday. And we look forward to making progress together tonight as we grow our shared understanding of our scope and reach and the future that we are focused on to make. We are all blessed to be part of an organization that is in good financial health and that is having impact on our communities.
Tonight, we have two specific goals. First, we hope to showcase the intentional ways that we operate on a daily, weekly, monthly, and annual basis to make the district better in every task we complete and every strategy we employ. Are we perfect? Most definitely not. Do we try our best to honor the 130-year history of this place in every step we take? Most definitely yes. It is an expectation of this team that we continue to evolve and learn from mistakes. Do we make mistakes? Sure. Because of the volume of what we manage and the places that in the volume and pace that we keep, it's impossible to achieve perfection. In fact, we often find that our greatest strides come from our biggest mess-ups, which is a hallmark of resilience and drive. Next, we will work to showcase our achievements from 2024 and our goals for 2025. We, along with the relevant staff, will share the foundations of our proposals tied to our commitment documents, which we will talk more about as we proceed tonight.
As approved by this Board of Trustees, our organizational mission stands as the North Star of all of our work and our commitment to contribute to healthy and vibrant communities by responsibly using our resources to offer high-quality parks, recreation, and educational experiences to those who live, work, or play in our district. Please note that when we say that, we mean clearly that our parks, recreation, and education experiences are for all people who live, work, and play with us.
As 2024 comes to a close, we look a little bit different than we have in past years. We're a little bit older, though we look pretty great for having celebrated our 130th birthday this year. Our leadership looks a little bit different as we have said goodbye to old friends who made great impact, and we have welcomed new faces who inspire and drive us in new ways daily. As 2025 quickly approaches, we are all, old and new and those in between, proud to celebrate our work and recognize the opportunities that are within our reach as we continue to take steps towards that North Star, which drives us to grow and change.
If you recall, last year we talked about the superpowers of our organization. Strength and speed, flexibility, even shape-shifting are superpowers used regularly by our team to meet the evolving needs of our changing community. But without purpose and structure, superpowers can be a liability. You can move too fast and get ahead of yourself. You can try to please everyone and wind up making everyone mad. You can be inconsistent and unreliable when you shift too often. As we tried to think about the message we wanted to share that provides context to everything that we present here, we thought about what makes us who we are.
So we look backwards before looking forward. We thought about our January 2024 presentation to the Illinois Association of Park Districts, where we highlighted our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and how the pillars included in that document have provided a strong foundation for our work and showed quantifiable results. We thought about the application of our guiding principles and our policy to several challenges that we've faced this year and how they have led us to consistent, clear communication. We thought about the intentional efforts made by staff to bring our first fully electric vehicle to the district, even though it would have been easier to just buy another big van for hauling stuff. And we thought about Parkapalooza and Founders Day and Earth Day and Zootober and Streets Belong to Me and Worldwide Day of Play and every single one of our cultural festivals. And we remembered the little boy who drank so much root beer at Soda Papalooza that he smelled like root beer long after his last taste. We saw the smiles of the kids who got backpacks in Treewind Park and heard the giggles of families who had eaten too much candy at Halloween. We thought about the children dancing outside the new shelter at Forest Park Nature Center to Safari Joe's singing, and remembered when our floating lanterns didn't glide across the lagoon like we thought they would, and how our quick-thinking Miles Halley used the PPD drone to make them go, a sight that we won't soon forget. We also reflected on the great governance impact made by our board this year. Do you remember the single meeting where, with your leadership, the district approved a lease to support 22 VA's use of the Detweiler Riverside Clubhouse, an agreement to work with renowned zoo designer Ace Torrey to guide next steps in zoo renovations, accepted a bid to begin construction of the Golf Learning Center reimagination, and approved a memorandum of understanding that will push forward a revitalized East Bluff Community Center. You have also approved multiple policy changes this year and handled several sensitive topics. All of those things didn't happen haphazardly or without purpose. They happened because of intentional application of our 3 commitments: to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, to environmental sustainability, and to vibrancy. Those commitment documents prioritize our work and are home to multiple philosophies that guide our tasks.
Tonight, we focus on philosophies that consistently guide our work. In the ancient world, stories of gods, heroes, and epic quests were not just tales of the past. They were reflections of human nature, aspirations, and the very essence of civilization, guiding ancient societies in their actions and beliefs. As we reflect on our own journey and the considerations that shape our own district civilization, Greek myths and philosophy provide some parallels that help us share our own guiding principles and the ideas that grow from them to shape the work of our organization.
Accepted by the Board of Trustees in February 2023, our implementation guiding principles provide a process for how we look at everything from public-private partnership opportunities to the creation of new park amenities and experiences. These guiding principles, along with the district's 3 commitments focused on vibrancy, environmental sustainability, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, drive how the district prioritizes our work both in our daily tasks and in our long-term strategies. Each of these documents is available for public review at the peoriaparks.org website.
Using these commitments, the district believes that it is uniquely positioned to support community initiatives around DEIA, health and wellness, vibrancy, and violence prevention in ways that only a park district is able to connect with people. To achieve that end, the district will continue to focus on program grant award solicitation, fundraising, and development to diversify its funding sources and make the organization more adaptable to changing external forces.
In addition to providing focus for both our annual strategic plan and our 5-year capital improvement plan, the district's commitment also provides structure to the organization of our best assets, our people. As you can see from the high-level organizational chart, leadership has tied to group focus areas to allow experts to be experts in the field of knowledge and support efforts across the district rather than in silos. Note, a complete organizational chart can be found on pages 125 to 141 of this document.
Our team relies on several foundational focuses when we build a plan, as we have here. Our budget process, which begins annually in late July, is built upon the following. First, institutional knowledge and expertise. The district is fortunate to have a leadership team made up of many long-tenured staff who are leaders in the region and beyond in their respective fields. These experts are well-versed in the daily operations of their programs or places, while also being very willing to consider new ways to do business when necessary. This knowledge, combined with an unwavering commitment to community, is the backbone for our work to ensure that programming is available and accessible in the face of barriers. This commitment shows in both fees and charges, the fees and charges schedule that was shared for review as part of our pre-presentation discussions and in our bond issue proposal, which was reviewed at last month's meeting.
Further, it has to be honored that much of what the district is able to offer to our communities is for free, and where it isn't, the district scholarship program is leaps and bounds beyond those found in other districts and helps ensure access for all. This commitment does result in increased subsidies in some locations and programs. But we know that both our staff and our trustees believe that it's essential if we are able to continue to impact the vibrancy and vitality of the community we serve.
Next, realistic revenue projections and responsible expense controls. While this budget does plan for some modest growth in staffing levels, this budget prioritizes being competitive in a challenging labor market. And last, but certainly not least, this budget promotes both efficiency and effectiveness. Our team has learned a lot in the last few years about ways to use staff and program resources to their fullest. Investment in technology and our workforce capacity highlight is this emphasis.
Quickly, here's an overview of how this presentation will work. We'll provide a district-wide overview, which will provide data about our overall organizational position and highlight 2024 achievements and 2025 goals. Then we will spend time on a fund level, taking a look at our philosophies and how they apply to action, along with some key financial metrics to consider. At the close of each overview, we will pause for questions, but please stop us if you have questions in the middle of a section. Before we provide our district high-level overview, are there any questions about how the presentation will work or information that has been provided so far?
So, to start us off, here's an example of how we make the connection between Greek philosophy and Park District philosophy. In the myth of the Trojan War, the Greeks were unable to breach the walls of Troy after 10 long years of battle. Ulysses devised the idea of building a large wooden horse to hide Greek soldiers inside, which was presented to the Trojans as a gift. This gift was framed as an offering to the gods, playing on the Trojans' religious beliefs. The Trojans, believing the war to be over and interpreting the horse as a sign of their victory, brought into the city walls.
The point of this story is the collaborative nature of the scheme. The ingenuity of Ulysses represents the innovative and strategic thinking necessary to make a partnership successful. He also brought a spark of innovation to the challenge. The Greeks brought their collective expertise, that of their soldiers, craftsmen, and leaders, to provide resources and to execute the idea. The myth ends with the idea that their plan succeeded because it was aligned with divine favor. The Greeks prayed to the gods for success, and many versions of the myth imply that the gods guided their actions. In this sense, the gods acted as external supporters of a higher shared goal focused on community and civic prosperity.
Just as the Greeks combined their forces and innovation with the support of the gods to win the Trojan War, successful collaboration both internally.
Speak up just a little bit more.
Sure.
This isn't you, it's all over.
That's okay. Just as the Greeks combined their forces and innovation with the support of the gods to win the Trojan War, successful collaboration both internally and externally at the Peoria Park District blends creativity and innovation with resources and infrastructure to achieve something greater than either group could on their own. In action, partnerships help us not only do more with less, but they also help us find pride in our work and share the vibrant energy that comes with a positive impact. Our team works long and sometimes strange hours, but true collaboration means that we don't do this on our own. Depending on the event, there are always different partners who stand alongside us as we plan, implement, and clean up after an event. They bring new ideas and sometimes long-standing tradition and pride that inspires both our district staff and those volunteers to always give our best and give us energy at the end of long seasons. These partners can come from both in and out of our organization, depending on the event, but they always bring a shared commitment to providing quality experiences for our patrons. We also have a loyal volunteer base that supports us regardless of the event or location. In the first 9 months of 2024, we have received more than 4,100 hours of support from this group of committed, talented people. We appreciate their generosity of time, which is often the hardest thing to give, and want to say thank you to them here tonight.
When our staff plans for signature events, we rely upon the expertise of our events team and programmers to build out a vibrant plan, but only with the support of our parks, maintenance, and repair crews who help with setup and tear down, our police and security teams who help ensure the safety of our staff and patrons throughout, and our staff family who volunteer their time in support of our mission. Are we able to achieve the results we hope for? We also benefit from external partnerships Our collaboration with the Peoria Fire Department with our annual Fill the Fire Truck Backpack Giveaway has grown year over year, and we have built relationships that serve us throughout the year outside of event planning process. In addition to supporting each other's causes, we have also helped to prepare candidates for hire by helping with mock interviews, partnerships with cultural organizations and volunteer-led committees that support our many cultural festivities with the NAACP and the Advocates for Access, among others, as we prioritize our DEIA work, are shining proof that we are better than when we work together. We reach further, serve more, and achieve greater, more long-lasting impact.
In support of these and other efforts, our staff continues to evolve and improve our internal communication and collaboration processes as well. Beginning in September, we shifted our working group structure to meet more regularly in smaller groups organized by facility or program type. This has allowed us to prioritize access of programmers and planners to executive leadership and empower them in their roles. At each meeting, we talk about measurable goals, strategy, and financial support and targets. This helps us connect dots between efforts to maximize collaboration and reduce competition, with the goal of moving us closer to the goals set forth in our commitment and strategic plan documents.
Tonight, we start our more detailed review at the district-wide level. Founded in 1894, our Peoria Park District was the first park district formed in the state. Throughout our many years of service, we have remained focused on our mission to contribute to healthy and vibrant communities by responsibly using our resources to offer high-quality parks, recreation, and educational experiences for all those who live, work, and play in our district. This mission-driven focus is clear when our nearly 122,000 residents and many others from the region visit our 9,000 acres of spaces and places, which range from open green space to manicured parks, to a state-of-the-art fitness center, a multi-sheet ice center, multiple rec centers that serve as the heartbeat of the communities they serve, as well as a zoo, children's museum, and a botanical garden, all located in one park space.
While we have highlighted the volume and variety of opportunities and assets within our spaces and places, especially for a district of this size, it is important to our ongoing improvement that we also establish targets for quality and quantity that allow us to offer the best variety of supports that tie back to our commitments and our mission-driven. If we are to be sustainable and successful, we must work together to implement data-driven evaluation and best practice efforts that are taken from both the public and private sectors, focused on being our best selves. And while these data points should not and cannot be all financially focused, tonight we will be spending the bulk of our time talking about the impact of our priorities and philosophies on our financial position.
District operating funds revenue is largely comprised of operating revenue, which is fees and charges revenue, and operating grant and donor revenue, and non-operating revenues, which is taxes and capital grants. Last year, the district was able to surpass pre-pandemic levels in fees and charges revenue while continuing to secure grant and donor funds. In 2025, the district must remain focused on three key revenue sources to create success. 1, generating fees and charges revenue. 2, the ability to seek, secure, and administer grant revenue. And 3, prudent management of our tax revenue.
The chart shown here reflects the district's revenues by source. In 2023, the district received record-breaking replacement tax revenue, which was the primary reason the district's operating fund balances grew. This heightened distribution of replacement tax was due to a distribution formula error at the state level. The state has since adjusted the formula and ratcheted back distributions. Because the district did not budget to rely on the irregularly high replacement tax revenue, there are no operating contractions needed for the lower, more normalized 2025 replacement tax revenue projections. Additionally, given the strong fees and charges growth of 2023 and 2024, staff is strategically working to continue that trend into 2025 with a 3% growth target.
The district continues to tax at or just under the maximum levy rate in its primary operating funds, and this is therefore reliant on EAV increases to increase property tax revenue. The district has benefited from EAV increases in the last 3 years, and for 2025 is budgeting on an estimated increase of 6%. This increase will put the EAV valuation at $2.45 billion and will be a record high valuation for the district. The strong housing market of '22 and the continued demand for housing in '23 are significant drivers of this increase.
While the EAV growth has allowed the district to sustain operations, the district will continue to remain vigilant in its pursuit to diversify revenue streams. Though the district is using a 6% EAV increase for its 2025 budget, it is not utilizing that full 6% increase in all of its levies. Given high replacement tax revenues in fiscal years '22 and '23, the health of the district's funds is strong, and the district believes it's important to temper the property tax levy demand it passes to its residents. For all levies except the bond and interest levy, the district is projecting a 4.99% increase, which you just saw in your earlier item tonight. When factoring the bond and interest levy into the total, the aggregate levy for 2024 levy rate, which funds 2025 tax revenues, is 0.77706. For an owner-occupied home valued at $200,000, that's an increase of $9.77. In addition to property taxes, as noted previously, the district receives personal property replacement tax revenue from the state, and the level of this revenue source can vary significantly from year to year. In 2025, the district is projecting $2.4 million of replacement tax. That is a level that is in line with historical averages, not the '22 and '23 record highs associated with the state formula error. The chart shown here reflects the 2025 budgeted allocation for all tax revenues by fund.
The chart shown here outlines the district's expenses excluding bonded project funded by fund for '23 through '25's proposed budget. As noted earlier, the district continues to face many challenges relative to the labor market and managing wage expenses. Because the district's operations are heavily reliant on personnel, wages, and benefits are the district's largest expenses, which means increases in labor expenses is one of the quickest and most material ways the district encounters financial stress if not prudently managed.
In 2025, the district's wage and benefit expenses are projected to support 321 full-time equivalents. That is 158 full-time positions and 163 FTE part-time positions, and includes increases associated with the state's minimum wage change to $15, approximately a 3.25% of cost of living adjustment for full-time staff, compliance with projected January 1st, 2025 FLSA salary exempt threshold changes, an increase to the district's IMRF employer contribution rate, and approximately a 10% increase in the district's health plan costs due primarily to the risk pool's loss history associated with rising prescription drug costs. The tax levy increase, along with the modest growth in fees and charges revenue, are projected to offset these personnel expense adjustments, and the district's responsible efforts to manage the ups and downs of our labor market since COVID has placed us in a relatively stable position. With regard to prudent management and stability, here's another example of philosophy that guides our actions.
In the fable of the ant and the grasshopper, the ant spends the summer diligently gathering and storing food, while the grasshopper enjoys the warm days, playing and singing. When winter arrives, the ant is well prepared with enough resource to survive, while the grasshopper finds itself in need, having failed to plan ahead. This story teaches us the value of foresight, wise resource management, and conservative budgeting. By carefully planning and allocating resources, we ensure that we are prepared for both the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. Just as the ant's diligence ensured its survival, our approach to budgeting and fiscal management safeguards the long-term stability and success of our organization.
Conservative
You want us to interrupt you
budgeting.
now? Did you invited us to interrupt you? Okay, we go back a couple slides? Let's go back to the expense slide if we could. Okay, so it appears to me that our expenses for the '25 budget from the revised budget are going up just under 8%, or roughly 8%. Is that about right?
Yes.
And then total expenses, it looks to me it's about the same. I was trying to do it real quick in my head, but it's about the same. Okay, so I'm just wondering how we're going to fund that. So our EAV has gone up 6%. We're going to increase levies by 4.99, so we're below the truth and taxation number.
Yes, sir.
And so will that generate sufficient funds to, since revenues are only going up that amount, are we going to generate enough funds to cover the 8% increase in expenses?
The property tax levy increase covers the biggest share of that. There are some charges for service revenue. Scott referenced earlier, I think in his portion, there's about a 3% increase in charges for service revenue. Those two combined primarily. There is some grant revenue, obviously, that we rely on, but it's not significantly growing next year in our numbers. So it's really property tax levy that's covering the biggest chunk of the expense increases, with some fees and charges a little bit.
Current year, we're looking at, again, if I'm doing this off memory, we're looking at about a $2.4 million surplus, right? So what are we looking at? What do you think is going to happen here?
So the budget that's presented tonight is a net zero budget.
All right.
I will add the caveat, though, when you look in your budget book, there is a note on the revenue and expenses for 2025's proposed, where it's not a net zero for all the funds. The variance lies in the HISRA fund. Note that because HISRA is a separate SRA, they cannot issue their own bond debt. So they will have years where they will have excess money that they store in reserves for future capital projects, or when they're expending capital projects, will have a negative budget.
Carrie, when you last year did the budget for 24, I'm trying to remember, did you predict a surplus or not?
No.
You were at zero, weren't you, at a break-even budget, right?
Correct. The park policy, financial policy for staff is that we must present to the board a net zero budget.
Right, so I guess what I'm wondering is, but we ended up having a surplus, or will end up having a surplus of about $2.4 million. What was the cause of that, and what does that tell us about the 25 budget?
What's the cause of that for 25?
For 24, and what does that tell us about the potential for 25?
Okay, gotcha. So for 24, and we'll go over a little detail in a few slides from now, I think, for 24, there's a few things that have been happening, and the board is generally aware of them. One of them, a big chunk of that, is labor market. We've struggled to fill many positions, so certainly especially the general fund, that's a spot that ended up where we budgeted but had lower expenses. In addition, we had some locations, Gulf being one of them, that beat their budget. So Riverplex also performed quite well, so also beat budget. But generally across the district, most revenue generating facilities met budget or exceeded them. So labor, growth in some fees and charges, revenue beyond what was budgeted, and then some other expense contractions across, contract service, supplies, a little bit of under budget there.
All right, and do you predict, obviously we can't tell what the weather's going to be in terms of golf, we can't tell a whole bunch of things, we hope we fill our positions, but the point is that the variable that caused this year's budget to give us this, I would say, healthy surplus, were issues related to the labor market and to just overperformance in a good way of certain of our activities, correct?
So I'm going to jump in here just to say, and we will cover this in just a second, but the idea that $2.4 million in a $50 million budget, if you do that math, that's 4 to 5%. That's really what a budget is, right? It's our best guess. And we try to be, as we've talked about, reasonable and conservative in some of our approaches, not knowing what the weather's going to be or what those factors are. So to think about that, it is within the normal variance that we would feel comfortable with that as good budgeting.
And I would agree, so thank you very much.
Can I follow up on just on your comments, questions? Is there a particular area where there were more labor issues, labor hiring issues?
In 2024, I would say in you know, we've had conversation with you in previous meetings that we did not struggle as much in filling positions in what are kind of our traditional recreation seasonal type positions. Although, of course, everybody always, this amount of labor that we hire seasonally, it's always a challenge. But certainly the positions that had the largest gaps compared to what was budgeted came out of mostly the maintenance realm. So park and some in golf maintenance, but primarily park maintenance.
So mainly the general fund then?
Correct.
And then a separate question, going back to the revenue. One more. Yes. This is just for my information. You were talking about the replacement fund tax I was just trying to do the math real quick, but do those come into the operating fund?
Yes, there are some allotments of replacement tax that can support some of the non-operatings, but primarily we're using replacement taxes just in non-operatings. But for example, there's a small allotment of replacement tax that sometimes goes into bond and interest fund. That's a non-operating fund. Because when you pass a bond ordinance that gives the appropriation of what the levy needs to be, the levy is exactly what the principal and interest payment would be on that bond. In any given year, we may end up not getting a full 100% collection on property taxes. So if we only collect 99 or 98 or 99.2% of property taxes, there's a shortfall in the levy compared to what we actually got in money, and we often fill that gap with replacement tax.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, just one other question. Of the revenues and expenses, how much is constituted by internal reimbursement or internal charges?
So the revenue by source, I don't know which, yes, revenue by source is the slide that is up. You see that there is the internal reimbursements. This year, the 2024 revised internal reimbursements is almost $6 million. Next year, it's almost $3 million. In the revenue and expense side, they net zero.
Right, okay. So your number was what again? I'm sorry.
So I'm looking in the internal reimbursements on the slide that is up. So the last row above the total revenues, that row is what those internal reimbursements are that are budgeted.
And that's entirely, all that's going to be offset is what you're saying.
Correct. So if you go to whatever slide the expenses are on, you see then internal services is the expense reference, and it's exactly the same.
I see, okay. I missed, that's how you're referring, the internal services is the internal expense reimbursement.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Conservative budgeting is not about being restrictive. It's about being responsible. In 2023, the district's Board of Trustees approved a fund balance and reserve policy that provides clear targets by fund for appropriate minimum reserve balances. Reserve balance targets are calculated by using annual budgeted expenditures to measure capacity to meet the needs of the district in a crisis and are determined through the application of criteria as outlined by the policy. The target for the general fund is at least 50% of the annual budgeted expenditures. The recreation, golf, riverfront, riverplex, museum, and police funds targets are each 35%, and our non-operating funds, except HISRA and capital-related funds, each have a 25% target.
This chart shows that using these requirements at the close of fiscal year 2023, general fund was over-reserved by $4.3 million. The museum fund was over-reserved by $179,000. The police fund was over-reserved by $127,000, and applicable non-operating funds were all over-reserved. While recreation-type funds, recreation, golf, riverfront, and riverplex, combined were only $1.4 million below reserve target. The district's revised 2024 budget is projecting to maintain, if not slightly improve, the reserve balance holdings, and balance proposed 2025 budget anticipates continuing to hold the district's strong fund balance position. Thinking like the ant in our myth, our district recognized the unnatural increase in personal property replacement tax as temporary, and And while the Grasshopper might have utilized these funds to support short-term growth, our district has prioritized long-term sustainability. Reserves built over time ensure that we are ready for the next winter, and our over-reserve position has allowed us to invest in capital improvements and district policies that would have proven impossible in prior years. To date, these over-reserves have supported progress at the Golf Learning Center project and at our work to improve our environmental sustainability efforts, as well as showing a significant investment in Glen Oak Park, the oldest park in our storied park district.
Before we review our 2024 achievements and 2025 key proposed changes, are there any questions? I guess as we handled those 2 slides ago. Yeah, okay.
To set the stage for our fund reviews, we have compiled significant achievements and key proposed changes across the district. It is difficult to distill all that we do in a year into a simple list of achievements, but we've done our best to build a list by fund in your budget document. Here, we want to take just a couple of minutes to highlight a sample of the many things that our PPD family has accomplished this year. As we celebrate our 130th anniversary with our inaugural Founders Day event, we kicked off the festivities with a ribbon-cutting celebration for the newly fully inclusive Glen Oak Playground. The process used to build this playground is a great example of both collaboration and responsible budgeting that we have referenced so far as philosophies. Built with funds designated from over reserves by our board, the playground design process included work with HISRA to bring families and organizations together to select elements and layout that support children and adults with special needs. Kudos to Becky Frederickson, Mary Harden, Mike Freeberg, and Tammy Johnson for coordinating this process, and to Katie Van Cleve and her team for helping to bring strong advocates to the table. Additional thanks to Matt Freeman, Matt Majors, and our maintenance and repair crew for their collaborative work to combine the expertise of our in-house teams with contractors to complete the project. Thanks to Chief Green and Ernest Starks, as well as Supervisor Jacob Cuban and Glen Oak Park Manager Brian O'Malley and his team for being diligent in maintaining the safety of the playground.
2024 also saw the reimagination of our district website. In partnership with Central States Media, our team led the effort to make the website easier to navigate and more efficient to maintain. The process utilized for PeoriaParks.org is also being applied to Playhouse, Zoo, and Riverplex websites as we work to prioritize making digital access for patrons easier and more consistent. We want to celebrate Jenny Swanson and Brittany Moldenauer for their work to lead this effort. Kudos to Kevin Davis, Nick Sutter Downs, and Scott Loftus for their ongoing work with RecTrack, which is our registration system and the backbone for much of our engagement on the website.
Implementation of Paycom moved our payroll timekeeping from paper forms and Excel sheets to an electronic time clock. Our system now uses the same platform from application through hire and onboarding to timekeeping and discipline tracking. As you will hear more about later, we're working to add professional training to the same platform in 2025. Special thanks to the team that led the implementation process for the district: Shalise Pye, Carrie Ross, Willie Howe, David Gray, Amber Eash, Angela Frixel, Amy Berger, John Norton, Jacob Cuban, Sue Wheeler, Scott Loftus, and Kadar Hefner for the time spent to ensure that this was implemented accurately and on schedule, and to all the management staff that actively worked to learn the new system tool and positively embrace change.
After conversation with the Heart of Illinois United Way, the Peoria Park District Foundation was formally accepted as a United Way partner agency this year. In consultation with the United Way, the foundation applied for and was awarded program grant support for both HISRA and the Moonlight Coalition for Adult Learning. HISRA's funding supports focus on the program's efforts to provide workforce skills development for special needs adults. Their work with Bicycle Brews garnered media attention this summer, and they've expanded from their home base at Bicycle Safety Town to offer coffee on the go at several events, including our most recent Zootober. They also sell consignment goods at local festivals and in area shops, including the Moonlighting at PIA gift shop. Katie Van Cleve, Shelby Martin, and their team have done amazing things with this program, and it is an honor to help to support it. Hetty Elliott Gardner, Emily Bernardi, and Shayla Grantham provided administrative support for Moonlight's many efforts, all of which are built upon its strong foundation of GED programming, which also received funding from the United Way. More than 200 students are supported by Moonlight each year, and the United Way helps to cover the costs of testing fees and tutoring. Housed primarily at Logan Recreation Center, the program also supports moonlighting at PIA, a gift shop at the Peoria International Airport, which is managed by Andrea Fortner, the proceeds from which support GED education. In December, the shop will pop up at Luthi Lights for the second consecutive year. Kudos and thanks to Carrie Ross, Kyle Dieter, Katie Van Cleve, Shelby Martin, Hetty Elliott Gardner, Alicia Woodworth, and everyone else who has helped to establish the relationship with the United Way.
After starting the district's effort under the name PPD on the Go with the help and oversight of Angela Martins, who did a great job keeping up with the ever-changing schedule and juggling internal demands to make PPD on the Go work, in 2024, in partnership with the YMCA, we expanded and rebranded to Rec and Roll, which maintains an active schedule that rotates through neighborhood parks, makes stops at local cultural festivals and other community events. Funded in part by a grant from Impact Central Illinois, this effort, which is now led by Michael Dixon and his team, celebrates healthy lifestyles and activity. Thanks to Michael for his work here and in his intentional efforts to engage youth in sports. His work to collaborate with local colleges and college students to offer clinics and sports enrichment to youth has not gone unnoticed. He also added flag football to our inventory this year, which was a success and will continue to grow, as flag football was also just added as an IHSA sport for girls this fall. We note here that HISRA too has added flag football to its inventory of Special Olympics and want to give a shout out to Kendrick Foster for his efforts in this regard.
Dream Squared continues to positively impact young lives. In 2024, 82% of program participants demonstrated academic improvement in reading and 84% improved in math. Janelle McLeod, Julie Craighead, and Jalen Jenkins and others have worked so hard to build a community with this program, and it is evident on the faces of the youth participants as they perform original works at the program's Black History Month event and as they play the steel drums at the holidays. These youth and the adults who engage with them are expanding their view and finding hope and opportunity along the way. As a part of quarterly monitoring, Janelle McLeod shared the following example of impact happening at Proctor. Some of the students of Dream Squared have been with us since we started this in 2021. It's been so enlightening to see the growth over the years. One thing that has stuck out for me is one little girl named A. A was in first grade and she does not like to exercise. I can remember asking her to walk with me around Proctor Center 3 times because that's a mile. As we were walking, we were talking about life and her being in the program. As we started our second lap, her concerns were not of when we would finish our walk, but if we were going to miss snack. As I look at her today, she is running down and doing back sprints on the football team because she is a part of the first flag football team program offered at the Park District. It made me so proud to see her running, and I told her to keep up the good work. Her confidence and self-esteem is showing up every day, and I am happy that Proctor Center can build this in her.
After much effort that started in September of 2023, the zoo was reaccredited by the Associations of Zoos and Aquariums in September as part of their annual conference. Reaccreditation came after significant investment in several initiatives at the zoo, including outdoor access for the spider monkeys, lemurs, and swift foxes, as well as landscape maintenance and administrative changes. AZA conducted a site visit in June, just days into our new director, Max Lake's tenure, and the auditors saw significant change and investment. If you haven't been to the zoo, please go. The work of our parks and maintenance repair crews has changed the way people see Africa and the work of our zoo maintenance team to care for the rest of the space. From Brenda Arasa and Tara Jacobson, who adopted a section of Asia and planted flowers and sewed prayer flags, to our zookeepers, led by Don Peatfish and John Rold and Roz Wolfram, who are focused on enrichment and animal welfare and advocacy, to Julie Brunton, Steve Hausler, Michelle Ainsley, and Shauna, who support quality experiences that engage and encourage visitors to come back. And I said all of that without mentioning Zootober. Year 1 saw nearly 9,000 people visit the zoo on October weekends, and we are already dreaming about what Year 2 has in store. Before we get there, we are excited to offer Luthi Lights in December, which will feature Winter Wonderland programming on December 14th. as well as a region first, drumroll, a Chinese Lantern Festival coming in March and April. We are very excited for all the things to come.
2024 has been a great year for environmental programming and efforts. Under the strong leadership of Matt Freeman and Christy Shoemaker, we celebrated our PPD signature event, Earth Week, which is one of our favorite days of the year, showcasing Forest Park Nature Center and the new shelter built there by funds generously donated by the Ennis Foundation. Earth Week allowed us to connect and celebrate our collective commitment to conservation and education, with Peoria Playhouse helping kids make walking sticks for hiking, Camp Wakanding releasing their first batches of maple syrup for the year, and our own Joe Christian providing entertainment for kids and families as his alter ego, Safari Joe. We express gratitude to Susie Ingram, Kelly Park, Cassie Sheehan, and all the others who helped to make Earth Day a huge success. This same team, which supports daily operations as well as field trips and educational hikes, also led the cross-departmental effort to conduct 140 acres of prescribed burns in 2024. This is an astounding feat considering that in the last 9 years, the district had only prescribed burned 150 acres. Thank you to all the aforementioned environmental interpretive and park maintenance team members and to land steward Jacob Moll for his commitment to stewardship and allocation of resources. We acknowledge the leadership it takes to prioritize and monitor these efforts across our 9,000 acres.
Originally funded as part of the 2022 State of Illinois budget, the Golf Learning Center Reimagination celebrated a key milestone this summer with the official beginning of construction. Thank you to our board and to Representative Jahan Gordon Booth for championing this project, which will feature top golf-like technology and high-quality food and beverage services. With the leadership of Greg Walker and Jeff Hyten, in collaboration with the owners of Fox Pub and Bearded Owl, our goal is to enhance an already vibrant facility to grow revenue and golfers.
As we review budget metrics, a key indicator of our financial health is the patronage of our significant facilities. Riverplex membership revenue drives that facility's viability and is one of the items that, if trending downward, could indicate the need for strategic change. In 2024, the Riverplex once again exceeded goals for revenue, and we are pleased to report that year over year, October membership households have increased 14%, from 4,866 households in 2023 to 5,551 in 2024. Kudos to Sue Wheeler, Jen Crow, Raquel Heron, Angie Bland, Jacob Whitehead, Damian Tracy, Craig Hibbard, and their teams for making the Riverplex a great place to exercise and get healthy.
The Riverplex the Riverplex membership numbers are just one example of the many data points that we work to track on a regular basis to monitor the health and impact of our organization. The slide shown here is an example of the PPD Impact Report that we launched in 2024. At a glance, this document gives us a better understanding of the depth and breadth of our work and the number of patrons that come into regular contact with the district. These numbers are shared monthly and then compiled year to date at the end of each quarter to show cumulative data. Thanks to our team for reporting these numbers monthly, and to Jenny Swanson here for organizing and sharing them in a user-friendly way.
A relatively stable budget process supports a consistent inventory of services and spaces. As shown here, key proposed changes in our 25 budget focus on investment in our workforce and on responsible, minimal increases to fees and charges that offset our growing expenses. Across the district, staff have worked as part of our budgeting and coordination efforts to build out a plan for 25 that includes consistent, reasonable fee and charge increases that will help to offset increasing wage costs, as well as necessary hourly rate increases beyond the minimum wage for those positions that have proven to be difficult to fill in 2024, negatively impacted our ability to take care of what we have. Staff has also worked to enhance our workforce development efforts tied to internships and growing our Be Anything continuum of supports to include camp counselor and training programs in 2025. We look forward to celebrating and opening the new Golf Learning Center and Lakeview Splash Pad, both of which we have talked about for a couple of years, but will open to the public officially in 2025.
We are also prioritizing, sir?
Your question.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to start off by saying, in reading the book that we got, I really appreciate the change in the format. It was good. It is good. That was good. So could you go back to the slide with the dashboard? Yeah. So, am I supposed to keep? Oh, yes.
Your button's on.
Oh, okay.
To the mic.
Yeah, we're more cramped here today. So do we have, so this is, that's specifically September, and earlier, the earlier presentation, you had calendar, more calendar stuff. So do we have projections that, because this is great to say what has happened, but for 25, do we have something that will match what we want to achieve in the very serious?
That's a great question. 2024 is actually the first year that we will have compiled a full year of this data. As we are meeting in our small groups, what will happen in November and December is that we will be working with individual program and facility leaders to set targets for 2025. So that will be a part of our effort to really drill down to that measurable goal piece. So this is our baseline, right? That first full year, it's going to give us an indicator of just where we are, and then be able to figure out where those spaces are that could potentially are pinch points or places where there's opportunity. And then we will set targets and see how we do against those metrics in 2025.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And then in the future, you'll also have comparative data then.
We will. We will. It probably won't be that pretty, but we will have a document that comes behind it that shows year over year how we compare to each other. Definitely.
If I can hop in, I was going to wait, but while we're already near talking about it. So for the Riverplex, I just want to note a few things. So Carrie, quickly, what's the total revenue generated by the Riverplex currently? And it's in our budget book, but of course, it leads to a larger.
Sorry, I don't have just that one memorized. Hang on. Total revenues expenses next year budgeted is 2,867,000.
And how much of that is tax or subsidized?
Tax subsidy is $539,666.
And then how much of that is supported by, what's the word that I'm looking for? Donations, if you will, by individuals like OSF.
Mission grant.
Correct.
The mission grant from OSF is 400,000.
So that's about 900,000 just from subsidy and the mission grant that
Correct.
support the operations.
Correct.
So in the event that we had and God forbid, we love the partnership with OSF. In the event that we did not get that mission grant from OSF, how would that impact the funding and operations of the Riverplex?
So this is a good question, and as a board, we've talked about in prior years, we've talked kind of about what are some big factors in the budget, positive or negative, that could swing numbers. The mission grant is one of those grants that would significantly impact the Riverplex, obviously, and the tax need there. At this juncture, we don't have any information that would tell us one way or the other if we're getting that grant. So we are just basically rolling over on the assumption that we're going to get it, as we have in the prior years. If we would not, frankly, it would be mid-year in a budget, mid-fiscal year, we would come to the board to have conversations about what that means. And depending on the year, if things are performing really strongly, you might have more runway. You have some runway in your fund balance to potentially support trying to find other options. If things are financially tougher and you don't have enough fund balance, your runway to make decisions is a little shorter as a board. But frankly, it would come down to the board would have decisions to make.
So in layman's terms, without the 400K, a hit on maintenance of the facility, a hit on programs and offerings in the facility, and ultimately, we would have to figure out something to maintain the level of operations that it currently has.
Yes, well, at the Riverplex, certainly it wouldn't necessarily be just Riverplex as a board. You would have to decide do you want to retain the service level at the Riverplex despite if it's going to cost the district more in tax subsidy? Or do you want to impact other services and retain, what do you want to do?
Absolutely.
Frankly.
So the reason why I wanted to make this point is because during this year, and you, Emily, and I met yesterday, and we spoke about this, we've had conversation about the physical performance of the Riverplex, the operations and services through the Riverplex as well. And the staff has done a great job of listing out how the Riverplex is right now maintaining, just like you just spoke about, right? We're hitting the benchmark. I want to encourage that, and it's not going to happen during this budget process, of course, but encourage that at some time we reconvene with that Riverplex conversation, because what I don't want to happen is in the event that we do take a hit with that mission grant or some other primary source of funding to the Riverplex, and then we have a reactive approach as to how do we stabilize operations and make up for that disruption of funding. $400K is no light feat when you're talking about again, a little over $2 million in operating revenue. So I guess just making a note as an action item for a later time, maybe this is something that we can follow up in finance or strategy, but what are some alternative revenue options for the Riverplex to not only maintain the operations that we have now, but at some time introduce new service offerings to increase the membership and daily admissions as well. Thank you.
Just to follow up, and to refresh my memory, is the grant from OSF on a yearly basis, or is it from a period of time?
It's yearly basis.
Just since we're asking some about specific programs, can you just give me a little bit more detail about Franciscan and what kind of rentals we're having there? The financial impact of those that we see changing, that sort of thing?
So you're asking just about rentals or just about everything else going on at FRC?
Well,
Okay.
Cover the water.
Okay. So yeah, so FRC mainly, we do see some rentals. It's not a lot because of the lack of access to the classrooms downstairs because of our regional office of education. We do offer quite a few programs. We have expanded those programs going into next year. We have roughly, I think, 28 to 32 different program offerings next year in the winter spring catalog. As you know, we do offer open pickleball in the evenings, as that's one of our key locations for evening play for those that do work during the day, as well as on Saturday mornings. But otherwise, Monday through Thursday, that place is pretty much, we do have something going on in the building. We leave Fridays and Sundays open for rentals if we do. I know staff is trying to work with the West Peoria, try to get the word out that space is available for rentals, whether it's basketball, whether it's scouts, whether it's something, just to make sure that there is some, so people are aware that it is available.
And then a second question about tennis. You were going to sort of break out pickleball from that because there's no mention.
I have those, Scott gave me the separated out budget. I haven't had a chance to review it, but I trust him and I will get that out to all of you.
Okay, can we talk about what it says? Just in sort of general?
So we talked about splitting out pickleball out from the tennis budget.
Yeah.
It's a challenge because one is because pickleball lives in multiple budget lines. So it lives in Riverplex, Lakeview Rec Center, Franciscan. So for 2024, I did just pull out sort of the revenues as well as some of the expenditures. So when I say the revenues are pretty basically I forecasted the third or the fourth quarter. But roughly in total revenues for pickleball, including open gyms, classes, and tournaments and rentals, it makes roughly about $27,000. In the expenses, it's really hard to separate those out, like I said. So what I'm only able to capture is part-time instructor pay for classes, as well as some supplies. This does not include any kind of capital expense, maintenance for the outdoor courts. Roughly your expenses are about $8,000. So, and that number is obviously higher than that, but again, that's what I could actually calculate.
So the 8,000 would be a minimum.
Yes,
expense,
correct.
Yeah. And then unrelated to finances, well, it is in a way. There weren't a lot of, are the rentals, or the use of the tennis courts for tournaments, when I went through the budget detail, there there really were no tournaments in tennis. And that's what I had in the past been told, well, we can't put pickleball lines on the tennis courts. We can't dual line them because of meeting certain qualifications for certain tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, the tournaments have actually disappeared. The PTA is no longer the Peoria Tennis Association, so they were one of the main contributors to the tournaments on the courts. The biggest challenge we have, like for example, at Glen Oak, we still actually rent those out for high school use, and they do use those for tournament plays for high school competitive matches. So we try not to put lines on there because it does get confusing, and it's just a lot. The other challenge that we do run into with putting pickleball courts or lines and nets on other courts is that it's the cost of providing nets, because we've been experiencing a lot of vandalism even with the nets that we have at Charter Oak. We're constantly replacing those, repairing those, because people are, between tennis and pickleball, they're moving those nets off. Sometimes they're not being put away properly. So sometimes kids get on there in the evenings and mess with them. So that's another expense that we would be dealing with in terms of adding additional pickleball lines onto tennis courts. But yes, correct. Tennis tournaments are down. The only ones that are really used for competitive play are Glen Oak.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. We are also prioritizing professional development. With the implementation of learning management software as previously approved by the board, in phase 1 of this implementation, we will focus on district-wide required trainings, including patron service, basic safety, and mandated reporting, as well as improved tracking of required staff-held certifications like CDL licenses and lifeguard certifications. The investment in professional development will extend even further in 2025, with the funds being set aside for tuition reimbursement to support eligible staff as they seek to achieve their higher educational goals. Further, in an effort to grow and improve our support of community volunteers that give their time and talent to enhance the district's impact, we are also returning to an original structure that supports a dedicated, full-time volunteer coordinator.
Before we move on, we want to note that Owen Center has budgeted for a facility maintenance shutdown in March and April, which is traditionally a slower time at the facility to support necessary infrastructure maintenance to help us bridge to significant capital upgrades slated for consideration starting in 2026. We are also excited, as previously mentioned, to host the first Chinese Lantern Festival in the region in March and April at the Peoria Zoo. In addition, we are looking forward to a second year of the Play in Peoria initiative in collaboration with Discover Peoria and OSF. Please note that the 2025 budget does not include funding for a Parkapalooza in the absence of state tourism grant support. While this represents a high-level review, specific proposed changes by fund are located under each tab in your budget book.
Relative to our.
Can I mention something?
Sure.
Just real quick. I just want to applaud the tuition reimbursement and going to the full-time volunteer person again. Very good. I think the tuition reimbursement is what attracts and helps keep people who are looking to move on, or at least develop their skill to a point. And the volunteer, well, you know how important, how much we depend on volunteers, so wonderful.
Relative to our overall organizational health, the 3 key takeaways that inform the information shared thus far are: 1, we continue to be in a near-term healthy financial position. In 2024, while we anticipate finishing the year with revenues over expenses, this comes not because of an influx of one-time revenue, but because of the normal ebb and flow of managing an organization of our size. Anticipated reserve growth is approximately 2% of our overall annual budget and has resulted primarily from revenue generation in some key areas of the organization and expense fluctuations associated with changes in our workforces and challenges in filling all of our budgeted positions. Number two, while we are projecting to see an EAV increase of 6% in 2025, which will positively impact property tax revenue, we have been informed by the state that we should expect to receive lower than average replacement tax revenue, certainly not record high replacement tax revenue that we had seen in prior years. Number three, as a result of our current position, along with the departure of Brent Wheeler as our deputy director, resources have been allocated within this budget to add 2 new full-time positions focused on growing management for the future, as well as on upgrades in our technology that will better support continuity across our location and investments in our staff human capital.
Before we begin individual fund reviews, do you have any other further questions? My timing of this slide always seems to be just about 2 slides off.
Emily,
go.
if I can just add,
Yes,
you'll be
please.
covering each separate,
We learned
Division.
our lesson from last year. We're going to go fund by fund, sort of.
thank you.
You can wait for the tweak to that, but sort of.
Our general fund covers just what the name implies, the general operational costs of the district. This fund is home to all of our care and maintenance work, as well as our administrative costs. Please note that capital projects that are donation, grant, or debt certificate funded are also included in the administration and business department of this fund. Since these sources of revenue and the timing of capital project expenses can vary from year to year, the general fund can experience material changes from year over year that don't reflect changes in operational levels. It is home to 33 different departments as outlined in your budget book, which starts on page 13. Here you can see the makeup of our workforce in the general fund. If you're a staffer that's funded here and you're in attendance tonight, please stand so the trustees and our viewers can see you. Please come to the mic and introduce yourself, give your title and years of service.
Matt Majors, supervisor of maintenance and repair, 16 years here.
Willie Howe, IT supervisor, 16 years.
Jacob Cuban, supervisor of park horticulture and recreation maintenance, 8 years.
Chuck Sims, fleet manager, been here about 8 years.
Amy Bircher, supervisor of accounting services, full-time for about 13 and a half years.
Nicole Staley, purchasing supervisor, 13 years also.
Hi, everyone. David Gray, recruitment and professional development manager, 20 years.
Melinda Hewitt, 8 years, and I'm the coordinator of events and volunteers.
Kadar Hefner, supervisor of business services, 9 years.
Bindu, senior accountant, 2 years.
Thank you, team. Our general fund philosophy connector is a story of Demeter and Persephone that explains the changing seasons and speaks to the themes of life, death, and rebirth. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture and fertility, had a beautiful daughter named Persephone, who was beloved by all. One day, while Persephone was picking flowers in a meadow, Hades, the god of the underworld, saw her and fell in love with her. He decided to abduct her and take her to the underworld to be his queen. Demeter, devastated by her daughter's disappearance, wandered the earth searching for her. In her grief, she neglected her duties as the goddess of agriculture, causing the crops to wither and the land to become barren. As famine spread across the world, humans suffered greatly. Eventually, Zeus, the king of the gods, intervened, and a compromise was reached. Persephone would spend part of the year with Hades in the underworld, autumn and winter, and the rest of the year with Demeter, spring and summer. During the time Persephone is in the underworld, Demeter mourns, and the earth experiences the cold and barren months. When Persephone returns, Demeter rejoices, and the earth blooms once again.
Okay, so who is the Greek mythology expert amongst all of you? I mean, clearly, there's something going on here. Is that you?
We had a little help, but we certainly, we saw the connectors of philosophy, and we hope this makes us a little bit more entertaining.
Well,
That's our goal.
I have to say I love this, and I love the story of Persephone, so thank you very much.
Just wait till you see how we connect it to philosophy and action.
Just as Demeter ensures the Earth's fertility through her deep connection to the natural world, our Peoria Park District is committed to nurturing our local environment. By transitioning from annual to perennial flower beds, we are embracing the wisdom of sustainability, much like the enduring cycles of nature in the myth of Demeter. Perennial plants are a symbol of our dedication to creating landscapes that not only thrive year after year, but also reduce waste and conserve resources. This shift is not just a change in tactics, but is also a reflection of our deeper values, a commitment to nurturing the earth, just as Demeter nurtured the fields in her work.
The cycles of nature are longer than the seasons. Insects who overwinter as eggs or larvae rely on vegetation cover over the winter. Many seeds require the cold winter temperatures in order to germinate in the spring. Perennial plants, especially those that are native to Illinois, provide better habitats for pollinators. Not only do they have wildlife value, but they also help us to keep within budgetary constraints by requiring less maintenance and staff time and less long-term monetary investment. The Peoria Park District is fortunate to have an in-house source for native prairie seeds at the Tawny Oaks Prairie. Staff harvest the seeds in the fall and are able to use them in planting projects throughout the district. If these seeds needed to be purchased, the market value is between $1,500 and $2,500 per acre. Staff is also looking to grow some of our native collected seeds into smaller plants that can be utilized in perennial landscape bed plantings.
Each year, as the growing season comes to an end, our prescribed fire season begins. As native plants go dormant, invasive plants have longer growing season. This makes them susceptible to the effects of fire. In 2024, under the direction of the new land steward position, crews from across the parks and EIS departments have come together to conduct prescribed burns in our natural areas and restoration sites. Several additional staff members are currently increasing their training levels and working towards burn manager certification. This past season, staff were able to burn 140 acres, which is equivalent to the amount burned in the 9 years prior. Icesia plantings in 2024 allowed staff to beautify some of our areas and parks that needed some attention. Staff designed, planted, mulched, and maintained areas at the Riverplex, Gwin Aquatics, Proctor Rec, Logan Rec, and Treewind Park. These plantings are a mix of native and exotic species, ensuring the exotic species do not currently possess invasive characteristics. They are also a mix of perennials, shrubs, and trees. They provide year-round interest, along with habitat for wildlife, all requiring less watering and fertilizing. Our natural areas and nature preserves are not maintenance-free zones. However, staff plan restoration activities along with the seasons and use tools like prescribed fire to care for them. In partnership with the volunteer department, the land steward has increased the number of volunteer ecological restoration workdays, allowing us to preserve unique habitats such as the hill prairies at Robinson Park and Singing Woods.
To identify low-use areas to convert to no-mow areas with the intention of turning them into naturalized plantings, staff look for areas of low use along with difficult-to-maintain areas. Staff then analyze soil types and tailor the species seed mix so that to the soil and habitat type. The usage of adjacent land by park patrons is also considered. The Newman Golf Course plantings are a perfect example of this. Areas of rough were identified and put into no-mow with the intent to eventually transition to a natural area at the golf course. This past spring, soil type, habitat, and public use were all considered when selecting native seed mix, which was a short grass prairie composition with custom splashes of seasonal color, all staying within a 3-foot tall or shorter area. Similar processes were employed for the areas to be seeded yet this fall at Grandview Drive Park and Bradley Park. In the first full year of Park District ownership of the Springdale Savanna, staff have worked to update management objectives for the site. The savanna itself is a remnant of an ancient landscape, whose trees witnessed changes to the landscape for hundreds of years. It's our duty and honor to protect this Illinois Natural Heritage Landmark. An ASV, which stands for All Service Vehicle, is also out for bid and will soon go to the board for approval. This machine will make staff time more efficient for tasks like tree planting, brush clearing, and recreation maintenance such as grading fields and landscaping. It will also help staff maintain and restore more natural areas in parks and preserves by clearing the way for native plants to germinate from the soil's seed bank.
We look forward to the addition of a fully accessible restroom next to the new Glen Oak Playground and thank HISRA for their participation in its design process. We will also use funds outside of our general obligation bonds to add basketball courts to the Glen Oak inventory in 2025. Our public input process will be front and center as we work to replace the playground in Endress Park with collaborative input from Peoria Heights. Not quite so flashy, but very important is our work to replace end-of-life machinery and vehicles and the ongoing maintenance of our roadways and parking lots.
In response to requests from trustees, staff have worked to reorganize the information provided within the summaries, the financial summaries in each fund. I'd like to extend gratitude to Carrie Ross and Kadar Hefner for their efforts in this regard. The general fund summaries begin on page 27. Please note that parks are evaluated based on per acre subsidy rather than a per user basis due to the difficulty in tracking user numbers, differences in usage patterns for neighborhood and regional parks, and to allow for better system-wide analysis. Within the 2025 proposed budget, please note the following shift. First, as noted, we have increased hourly rates for some part-time seasonal parks maintenance laborers with the goal of filling positions that were funded this year but that remained unfilled. We have also increased the labor allocation within the Recreation Maintenance Department and plan to have that team support our parks rentals and special event teams more heavily than in the past. Please also note that the increase in subsidy for Treewind Park attributes to the termination of the early Head Start use of the lower level of the pavilion that was noticed in late summer and shared with the board subsequent to that. District staff will meet with Peoria Grown before year's end to talk about other uses for this vacated area that supports our shared goals for support of the South Side.
Finally, here in the general fund and each subsequent fund presentation, we want to try to connect our fund efforts back to the commitments that we started our presentation with. As we progress in 2025, our focus will be on the following. First, policy updates that target equity and inclusion, starting with modification of our manual's introduction to both our welcoming resolution and an acknowledgement of our native land history, and continuing to update sections of the policy manual to consider the Crown Act, parental rights including nursing protections, and vocabulary to current expectations. Our environmental focus in 2025 will start with selection of an alternative energy consultant before the end of 2024, who will be contracted to review our inventory and make recommendations about short-term and long-term methods to reduce our carbon footprint and make our district more sustainable. Our general fund is the foundation for our vibrancy efforts across the entire organization. We have talked in past budgets about our spaces and places being our stage. This fund ensures that the stage is ready for activity and engagement, and our work in 2025 focuses on ensuring that our resources are effectively, efficiently, and environmentally focused.
What questions do you have about the 2025 general fund budget?
Could you go back to the last slide? And as I was trying to follow what Jenny was saying about the DEIA and how it comes into play. Could you explain? I see the policy updates, but can you explain better what you were just saying?
So our goal in 2020, what? Oh, Brianna's got it. I forgot. So sorry. I'm looking over on the other side where you normally sit. Sorry.
You're okay. The policy ups, what was your question? Give me one moment, Tim.
Reference was made to key effort related to DEIA and the general fund being policy updates. And I don't understand it. So please explain it. Somebody.
So generally, the folks that you see sitting at this table and the folks who will push those policy updates in collaboration with Trustee Sierra as the chair are folks who are primarily funded out of the general fund. So because that is an administrative lead of the park district, that's where we allocated that focus and that attribute for 2025. It's not necessarily a mechanism of anything more than recognizing that the people power to make that happen will come from the general fund primarily.
All right. And if I could just add to this, you and I, of course, talked about this, but since this is where we find the parks, this fund, accessibility, track chairs, it's a no-brainer in my mind. So maybe we can really put emphasis on that. in this
Absolutely.
fund.
It's not funded within this budget, though we are looking for, as you know, a special source to fund that. Once that happens, then we're going to celebrate the heck out of it because we're really excited
Right.
about it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. And I'm going to ask you to be patient with me because I do have a few questions, but it's really for my information. I'd like to become more familiar with some parts of the budget. And by the way, the layout is wonderful. I think it explains a lot of the things that we're looking for. I'm looking for, certainly. And it's an easy read. Really is it's pretty easy to go through the statistics and the data and make sense of what's there. So still, I have questions. So on page 30, no, not 30. Yes, page 30. At the bottom, landscape construction, last year was approved for 421,000, asking for 409. I'm really just checking to make sure you're going to have enough. And what's the change? Why the difference between last year and this year? So at the bottom of
Are you comparing
page 30 on the summary, financial summary,
so are you comparing the 2020?
comparing at the actual approved amount last year of 421 and asking for 409 this year, what changed? I mean, I noticed you didn't spend all of it for 24.
I don't know for sure. My guess is there were some overtime and E-time charges that maybe
It's
paid that down in
The
23.
largest variance between the 2024 proposed budget and the 2024 revised is the decrease in part-time payrolls. This is one department example of part-time payroll that didn't get fully expended in the 2024 revised forecast. And then rolling into 2025, that part-time payroll renormalizes, but not quite as high as what 24 proposed was. Does that help you, Matt?
Yeah, I thought he was comparing the 24 original budget versus 25 proposed.
Yeah.
It funds the same level of positions, which it does include,
The 409
yes.
funds the same.
Yep.
Okay. On the bottom of page 31, planning, design, and construction. What's the difference? Why the large jump in the,
We were
on the
able,
approved and,
we were able to add a land manager position as well as
good for
another
you.
position moved from a different department into ours.
okay. So that's the
The land manager,
full-time,
the land manager position actually was funded in the 2024 budget. So we talked about that last year, but we've been able to add that position. And because of the massive amounts of capital work that are happening right now, it is important to make that investment in replacing that, but also adding another planner.
okay, oh, so it's an additional planner on top of the land manager. On page 33 in Trewen, the increase, is that from Head Start leaving?
The decreased revenue.
Yes, the decrease in revenue.
Yeah, the decreased revenue is from PCCEO Head Start moving out of the facility, correct?
Okay. Thank you. I think that's it. How about it?
I'll jump in here.
Thank you.
So going back to True Wind Park, were you finished?
No,
Oh.
please.
Going back to True Wind Park Pavilion. So I think there are two things that I just want to discuss. One, you had mentioned in your overview of the general fund that there are conversations that are to be had with Peoria Grown. Can you just elaborate upon that? That way the full board understands what we should be anticipating from that.
Sure. So before the end of the year, we are planning a meeting with Peoria Grown to look at their strategic objectives. We have, as part of our relationship with them, committed to helping them to grow to meet their goals, which are shared goals, obviously, with the Park District. With the leaving of Early Head Start, our first stop would be to see if Peoria Grown has a use for that lower level space before we try to bring in another partner or try to use that space ourselves. It makes sense to just meet their needs and help them to continue to grow, especially if that offers us some of the flexibility that we talked about this year that is necessary for us to be able to use the pavilion for some Park District purpose. If the lower level can help us to have both groups meet their objectives, we want to evaluate that first before we look at other options. So our priority is to just understand exactly where their strategic plan has evolved, tie that to our strategic efforts and focus for Treeland Park in the south side, and see where there are opportunities for overlap that would benefit both of us.
Which is so important when we talk about creating or reinvigorating Trueland Park into a food insecurity hub or just a healthcare hub within its entirety. So one of my questions before I move on is, with the vacating of, or actually, no, I'll table that. So when it comes to rentals, because I know that was a concern by some members on the board as well, as it pertains to our partnership with Peoria Grown, how have rentals been impacted this year with the presence of Peoria Grown at Trueland Park Pavilion?
Our plan, as executed and talked about with the board, to have weekend availability, so Friday evenings and Saturdays available for rental, has gone well. We've seen, and I don't know year-over-year comparison, but a steady rental menu this year at Treeland Pavilion, and the groups coexist very well. Peoria Grown is very receptive when we need them. Hey, store away your supplies. We have a rental this weekend, and they're very receptive and understand that relationship. And our opinion is it's worked very well.
So
will that
in
continue?
other words, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm just, will that continue in the next year then?
That is as the budget is proposed to you tonight. Yes.
So in other words, we've seen virtually no disruption of rentals with Peoria being present at the current volume that they're present in.
That would be what I would say, yes.
Okay, so it's been steady, and
Yes, sir.
I want to point that out because I know one thing that we have to be prepared for as a full board is Trueland or Peoria Grown expressing interest in increasing their hours of operation, which is something that I know has been previously discussed in programming, but that's something that we should be prepared for. We should also welcome as well, especially as we talk about Head Start leaving, revenue streams decreasing. I mean, we do have to look to generate some sort of revenue with that facility. And then the other question that I have is, I don't recall, and you and I spoke about this yesterday, Emily, can you remind me why Head Start vacated? Was it a space thing?
That was really a decision from their standpoint. Organizationally, that is a grant-funded program, and they were able, from my understanding, to be able to move that program into space that allowed them to support themselves, right? So they moved into other space that was owned already by the organization so that they weren't paying rent to an external source, being able to allocate all those dollars that come from the grant to support the program.
Got it. So it's safe to say that since we don't see since we see a decrease in revenue, we haven't found someone to occupy the space. So are we actively pursuing community partners?
We are not. We really want to evaluate the Peoria Grown opportunity. We are always in need of storage space or other uses. So at this point, we're really trying to just focus on that Peoria Grown as the first option, look at what our internal needs or possibilities are, and then we would have those conversations about other uses. The lower level isn't necessarily desirable to a lot of folks, right? So it does make sense to try to see if there's a way to support some of Peoria Grown's growth goals and or to look internally at what the Park District might use that space for first.
Understood. Thank you.
I would also add to Emily's, she touched on this just a little bit previously. internally, staff is talking about how can we capitalize on the community that Peoria Grown is serving to bring our programming to them. And if we're able to do that in some of those lower level spaces, some of those classroom type spaces, and bring programming to folks that Peoria Grown is serving to expand our reach of services there, we certainly want to explore that. So that will be part of those conversations that we have when we meet with their group shortly.
Perfect. Thank you.
Similar to our application of fund balance and reserve policy, we have combined the recreation, golf, riverfront, and riverplex funds into a grouping termed recreation type funds. These funds share recreation property tax levies and have multiple overlap in their program operations, focus, and resource allocation. As such, we believe it makes sense to combine our overview here as well. In your budget books, each fund is reviewed separately, and we will highlight relevant notes for each here. But as we think about philosophy, drivers, and impact, there are many things that are stronger when presented together. It is our tradition to remind you that these funds put the fun in fund, and they certainly do that for our patrons every day. Here you can see the makeup of our workforce and the highlighted recreation type funds. If you are a staff or funded here, please stand so the trustees and our viewers can see you, and please come to the microphone to introduce yourselves and give your job title and years of service.
Chanel Hargrave Murray, Supervisor of Community Connections, 2 years.
Doug Silber, General Manager, Owen Center, 28 years.
Greg Walker, Director of Golf Operations, almost 7 years.
Mike Dixon, Youth Sports Engagement Specialist, 1.5 years.
Kevin Davis, Business Systems Supervisor, 9 years.
Melissa Sierra, Director of the Peoria Playhouse, 2 years.
John Peetfish, Assistant Director at Peoria Zoo, over 30 years.
Melinda Hewitt, Coordinator of Events and Volunteers, 8 years.
Jonelle McLeod, 20 years as General Manager of Proctor and Logan Recreation Center.
Sue Wheeler, Supervisor of the Riverplex and Aquatics, 32 years.
Jake Rockhold, Supervisor of Events, 9 years.
Max Lakes, Director of Peoria Zoo and Lucy Botanical Gardens, 5 months.
Jess Main, Out of School Programs and Camp Manager, 3.5 years.
Angela Martins, 3 years, Manager of Athletics and Recreation Services.
Jeff Hayden, Director of Golf Maintenance, 34 years.
Athena was the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and civic life. Unlike other gods who remained isolated on Mount Olympus, Athena was known for her active role in the lives of mortals. She was a protector of cities, a guide in strategic planning, and a promoter of community well-being. Her wisdom was not confined to a single temple, but was spread across the many cities that revered her.
In the spirit of Athena, our organization works to utilize public input and engagement to prioritize its offerings and amenities. In 2024, we have used survey tools to gather input on the 3rd of July, the Lakeview Splash Pad, Franciscan Recreation Complex Playground, and our community survey, which is conducted every 3 to 4 years. We look forward to reviewing our just closed community survey to help shape our 2025 strategic focus, and we'll share this data with staff and trustees and our community soon. We also rely upon patron surveys following programs and events that help us to evaluate and improve. Since COVID, we have emphasized the value of expanding our offerings beyond central locations and into parks and neighborhoods across our area. This works to ensure that all members of our community can access the resources and opportunities that highlight wellness and fun that we provide. This decentralized approach reflects Athena's strategic mindset, allowing us to meet people where they are, foster a sense of community, and create vibrant, active spaces across our entire service area. It's a strategy that not only makes our programming more accessible, but also enriches the fabric of the entire community, just as Athena enriched the cities under her protection. Playhouse examples include our Real Tools space here at the Noble Center that allows us to serve more people with open-ended programming. Homeschoolers, after-school groups, and scouts have participated in this space. We are also pleased to share our preschool parties, PPD summer camp, and as part of Juneteenth, the Horizon collaboration with District 150, Community Sing and Sign, Trunk or Treats, the Autism and Neurodivergent Resource Fair, and the PPD Riverfront events, just to name a few. Some of these efforts cross-promote and engage patrons with collaborative programs that share a title, but that rotate across locations to encourage shared target audiences to try new spaces and places.
Other example of these program types include Rec and Roll, which has offered more than 58 free opportunities to play and get active in 2024. This mobile program, offered in partnership with the Greater Peoria Family YMCA, helps us reach youth and families who may not have the time or resources to go to traditional district facilities. This philosophy is seen in our increased emphasis on sports opportunities that include clinics and shorter engagements that are cost-effective and easier for busy families to fit into their schedule. In addition to year 2 of Rec and Roll, 2025 will also see a continuation of The Streets Belong to Me, a PPD signature event that celebrates the youth's role in keeping our community safe. Yoga in the Park, which offers free yoga on Saturday mornings from Memorial Day to Labor Day across a variety of the district parks. And Parks on Tap, which brings food, drink, and entertainment to multiple parks and events each warm season. In addition, my team and I have been able to take sports and recreation to local schools during PE and after school, while engaging with social service agencies to offer programming in their space as well. In addition to the ways already mentioned, we continue to take our expertise on the road with our traveling naturalist program. The Zoo Mobile Parks on Tap, and our non-sports support of in and out of school programming with local school districts. We also prioritize this method of outreach with our Streets Belong to Me signature series, hosted in at least 3 different parks each year. Simply put, Athena's emphasis on supporting patrons didn't care about where this support happens, rather than, and neither do we.
Athena's emphasis on well-being and engagement of our communities also shines through in our events, especially those designated as our signature events in the district. Earth Week, Worldwide Day of Play, and Be Anything, the Streets Belong to Me series, cultural festivals, and Zootober are all focused on adding vibrant, diverse experience to our community's inventory of fun. Signature events are defined as those that, because of their scope, message, and reach, demand coordinated support across the district to maximize their impact. In 2025, our Signature and Community Event Working Group will continue to meet year-round to ensure coordination of resources to maximize the support of our communities.
The recreation-type funds are the primary drivers of fees and charges in our organization. In Greek mythology, the golden fleece was a symbol of wealth, power, and prosperity. The hero Jason, along with Argonauts, embarked on a perilous journey to obtain this treasure, understanding that it held the key to securing the funding of their kingdom. The quest was not just about the immediate gain, it was about investing in a resource that would sustain and empower their people for generations to come.
In our organization, investing in revenue generation is our quest for the golden fleece. By focusing on initiatives that generate income, we create the resources necessary to sustain and support other essential parts of our budget. Just as Jason and the Argonauts understood the importance of securing the fleece for their kingdom's prosperity, we recognize that strategic investments in revenue generation are crucial to maintaining the vitality of our public services.
This approach ensures that we are not just relying on existing resources, but actively seeking new opportunities to enhance financial stability. By doing so, we can continue to support our core mission while also ensuring that we have the flexibility to innovate and grow. Like the Argonauts, we are on a journey to secure the future prosperity of our organization and community. In 2025, our district will celebrate the much-anticipated opening of the reimagined Golf Learning Center. This project, as you are aware, has been funded in part by the state of Illinois. With this grant assistance, which has been shepherded by Representative Jahan Gordon Booth, our dollars have stretched farther, and the potential revenue stream that comes with the project will help to grow the dollars that are brought into the golf fund, and just as importantly, grow the game of golf.
As we near the end of 2024, Peoria Zoo is focused on both operational and capital change. Investment in special events like Zootober shows great promise, with nearly 9,000 people attending Zootober events in our first year of coordinated programming during the month. The series of 3 weekend events also shows great promise for the growth and evolution of our food and beverage offerings. In addition, the zoo and Peoria Zoological Society are in the midst of master planning and a feasibility study that together will set the stage for the launch of a capital campaign to fund the renovation and reimagination of the older parts of Peoria Zoo, raising both animal care and visitor experience to the high levels offered by the Africa exhibit.
There are multiple projects planned across these funds. Highlights include installation of the newly approved FRC playground, replacement of both the Riverplex Arena floor and the Lakeview Rec elevator, and upgrades to the Peoria Playhouse water table and Real Tools exhibits. Central Park pool repairs are also noted here and will be discussed further in the next slide.
Here are a few notes for your consideration as you review the financial summary by section. In contrast to the per acre subsidy calculated for general fund locations, the recreation type funds rely upon a per user subsidy. As a part of our July leadership training, staff were directed in a consistent way to track participants for budgeting purposes, and you may see some fluctuation across budget years. That is due to a change in expectation rather than a change in usership. Regardless, as we move forward, you will be able to compare these numbers confidently across departments as a result of staff's new understanding and expectations set forth by leadership.
Next, within the Central Park pool analysis, we remind you of the conversation that we had in public sessions last month. Central Park Pool is leased to the Peoria Area Water Wizards for their private use. As part of this agreement, the district has a limit on capital repairs that we have surpassed in years past in order to maintain the integrity of the building. In addition to the operating expenses shown here, there are also dollars allocated in the 2025 bond issue focused on repair needs at the facility. As we approach the renewal of this agreement with PAW, the long-term viability and needs of the building, which is partially owned by Peoria Public Schools, will need to be reviewed in more detail.
Within the riverfront summaries, which begin on page 71, the district shows a Department for Play in Peoria. This is a collaborative effort that features both public and private organizations across the region and focuses on highlighting the innovation that is the heart of Peoria. Our district role is to participate in planning and to help facilitate a concert or concert series as part of the week-long event. Our Peoria Park District Foundation has also established a fund to hold tax-deductible donations to support the effort.
Next, we note that the Golf Fund's financial summaries have added a new program line to allow for tracking of Golf Learning
I
Center
have a question
operations.
before we move on. Just,
Sure.
the July 3rd expenses, or I'm sorry, the firework expenses that are in here, that's July 4th? And could you explain what they're composed of?
Can you clarify which budget you're referencing?
Fireworks?
In the Riverfront Fund?
Yes.
So those do not account for the actual fireworks themselves, but they do account for the events that we do around July 4th on the riverfront. So typically we'll have a concert on or around July 3rd. So that's what those expenses are. It also accounts for our staff cleanup, vendors, and expenses that we incur on July 4th, but we do not pay specifically for the fireworks.
Yeah, but do we have staff that are, are secure, our police are there on the 4th? Does it include that, or is that somewhere else?
Our police are not in that budget. But they certainly do support that effort. They spend a lot of their time
Yeah.
focused on like the North Field and the Riverplex area.
So our investment in that would be larger if we had all of the expenses.
Correct.
In there.
Yeah, and that does not include our full-time staff time in that as well, that are spending
Yeah,
multiple hours on site that day.
I'm wondering if we could get that for, for the next meeting or something, just so we can, and
Sure.
you mentioned July 3rd as included in that. So what does that mean?
So that means on the riverfront, typically we've done a concert on July 3rd, so that would include any revenue and expenses associated with the concert that comes out of our NO6 fireworks budget.
But on July 3rd? Or,
Down the riverfront.
or because July 3rd is in the past been Glen Oak Park.
So July 3rd, I think we're talking about two separate things.
Okay.
July 3rd, at the riverfront budget funds July 3rd and 4th, like red, white, and boom activities. As far as Glen Oak Park, July 3rd, that's out of the B46 special event budget lines. So it's completely separate from the riverfront fund.
So we're funding two events on the same evening in July 3rd.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, okay, I guess I really didn't understand that.
That's one of the conversations that we've had about the challenges of the 3rd of July, is that our events team is split between both locations as a result of our obligations tied to that holiday. Similarly, our budget is split for that weekend across. The recreation fund is where the expenses for Glen Oak Park sit, and those are in there, and they
Yeah.
will be available depending on the structure that we are directed to implement. And then the 4th of July sits in the Riverfront Fund.
Okay. So when you say a concert, how many people attend a concert generally? And what kind of does it have a certain focus?
It varies from year to year. So we partner with Midwest Communications, who funds the fireworks on July 4th. So we generally try and pair concerts that suit their radio stations. This past year, we did a classic rock show. I think our attendance was around 800 on July 3rd this year. As of now, we don't have anything set in stone for 2025.
And is that at the landing?
Correct.
Yeah.
Sefke stage, yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question as it pertains to Riverfront. Can you, Emily or Carrie or whomever, expound upon the Play in Peoria budget line item?
Sure. So we wanted to create the fund because we know that that is a collaboration that we are interested in continuing. So we wanted to have a place to document revenue and expenses. As we start to look at and work with the partners to figure out what 2025 looks like, one of the lessons we learned very clearly in 2024, as you're aware, that you can't wait until July to try and find entertainment for a September event. So we wanted to be able to put those ins and outs in there to be able to track that separately. Because it is a partner relationship, much like the other separate tracked departments in that Riverfront Fund, we wanted to be able to track that separately to be able to report out to our partners and track ourselves what our costs are associated with that collaboration.
So we're investing $75,000.
It's just an in-out. We just showed an estimate. I don't know, we don't know until we figure out what that partnership looks like, where those dollars are going to come from. We did set aside, as we noted, we've created a fund in the Park District Foundation to capture those dollars, and we put that in the foundation because it's not a set like year to year, right? There are dollars sitting there now as a donation towards 2025, which is difficult for us to monitor and track within the district funds. And so we've created that there. The revenue and expenses allows us to put dollars in from the foundation to help cover those costs, but it's just a best guess. We don't know until we get to the point where we figure out exactly what the scope of that is, but we wanted to create the budget so that you would know that it is something that we intend to participate in again.
So in other words, this is a fundraising goal through the foundation.
We show it as an in-out of a net zero because it's not a goal of ours to raise revenue from this, but we wanted to be able to have, again, the place to track. And so we didn't want it to negatively impact or show a subsidy because it is our intent that it would be funded and supported by donations and fundraising that happens as part of sponsorships across the community.
So I'm happy you said intent. In the event that you don't meet that benchmark of $75,000 to support the Play in Peoria effort, is subsidizing this event option for you all?
That would be for you all to determine. We would come back to you to say that we wanted to participate in this and then make sure that was something you wanted us to participate in.
Perfect, thank you.
Mhm.
Nick, I had a question just to follow up on the 4th of July. In the narrative, it says that I think I know the answer to this, but in the narrative, it says that it attracts 200,000 people, but in the summary, it says 55,000, 60,000.
So where that 200,000 number comes from is our partners from the radio station. They're talking about the entire region, which certainly includes East Peoria. And then my number is really based on Peoria side estimates.
Okay, that's what I figured. Thanks.
Okay, we ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay. Next, we note that the Golf Fund's financial summaries have added a new program line to allow for tracking of Golf Learning Center operations for traditional golf uses, separate from the enterprise efforts that are under construction currently. This will give us a clear way to evaluate the effectiveness of our investment, while also being able to critically analyze the financial position of our courses, separate from this revenue generator. Financial summaries for the Golf Fund may be found starting on page 88.
And finally, a quick note about the Riverplex financial summaries. This budget does assume the receipt of an OSF mission grant, but does not contemplate any increase in membership rates, which is being considered mid-year by the partners. No changes will be made without presentation to and approval by the Peoria Park District Board of Trustees and the Greater Peoria Family YMCA Board of Directors.
Our key efforts in 2025 by commitment are highlighted on the slide and are straightforward, but we want to make one note here before we move on. As part of our community survey, one preliminary data point showed that 70% of responders were not aware of the scope and scale of the district's scholarship program. In 2025, my team, along with our leadership team, will work on a campaign focused on celebrating the value of this offering and work to encourage more engagement from both applicants and donors who can help to grow the reach of this program.
Within our environmental education efforts, we look forward to exploring how conservation is defined by our different departments and where there are similarities and differences that can be celebrated and accentuated. We are also prioritizing opportunities for passive education with signage explaining our pollinators and perennial plantings and how they help our environment. As we proceed with our alternate energy consultant, we will have multiple opportunities for internal education for staff as well, which we are excited to participate in and apply to our daily habits here in the district.
As far as vibrancy, as Scott said, the rec type funds put the fun in fun. And our work with signature events is our opportunity to showcase our expertise and impact to our community and the region. While these are the most visible of our work, we also contribute to vibrancy with the spaces we provide and the collaborations we participate in.
What additional questions do you have about the recreation type funds?
Can I just suggest something
Sir.
before we go on? As the mind can only absorb what the seat can endure, can we take a 5-minute break before we go into questions?
You spoke so it was either going to be before questions or after questions. We were going to ask for just a stretch break.
Yes.
We're doing really great, gang, like amazingly well. I don't want to jinx it.
And can I say, Michael, you did a great job.
Okay.
So can we just adjourn 5 minutes?
We'll take a 5-minute break. Yeah. Okay. We'll come on back, join the meeting again. Now, where did we leave off at? Questions, was it? Was it questions?
Yeah, question, if I could?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. You know, I always find the issue about what we're subsidizing and how much to be a fascinating issue, and percentage-wise. So if I look at these funds, I mean, there's a marked difference in the percentage of the fund, the percentage of the total expenses we fund. So with recreation, we fund about 31%. With Riverfront, we fund about 23%. With, you know, I know we haven't done museum yet, but let me just say for museum, it's about 91%. Golf fund, it's 10%. Riverplex, it's about 19%. So I guess my question is this: are those percentages, are they just kind of historic and they just kind of came about that way? Or do we say to ourselves, or did we ever say to ourselves, you know what, we want to emphasize this more than that? I mean, the difference between 10%, which is the golf fund, and 30% is pretty dramatic difference in the amount that we're subsidizing. So, I mean, does this represent a philosophical decision? Does it represent a practical decision? Or does it represent a, just kind of a historic, this is always the way it was?
So I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, first of all, I honor that we would be thrilled if historically we were able to say that golf was always at 10%, right? You're at 10% with golf because of where we are with rounds, which is the best it's been in 8 or 9 years. You also see the impact of that enterprise fund. And this is a great moment for me to be able to say thank you to you and to the golf committee for being willing to think about fee increases that are commensurate with the quality of the product that we're offering. That's why you see that percentage, right? Philosophically, it should always have been that, because it is something that is fee-based. It is an enterprise fund, is what we would call it, that it is supposed to generate revenues like that. When you think about the museum fund, philosophically, that is not a space where we are generating revenue as our primary objective, right? The dollars that you see tied to rentals, they tie to field trips and programming and education things. And we actually had that conversation, Trustee Montez, we talked about that in our time together on Monday, that there is a valuation that happens for patrons. If everything is free, there's an assessment of the quality. Well, that must not be great, right? And so we've tried to find that sweet spot where we do put a value on things. It's still very, very affordable and accessible, but we want people to know and honor the expertise of the people who work with us and the time they put into that programming. So we are charging something for admission and for participation in some of those things. But the bulk of the museum fund is access to trails and open space, right? That one's hard. Parks would be the same way if you looked at those numbers. Recreation is a good mix of, we certainly try to focus our tax subsidy on things that are beginner programs or lifelong learning kinds of things that help you to maintain health and wellness. If it's something more specialized and something that doesn't have that same universal goal, then we try to have the subsidy be less. The Riverplex, what you're seeing there is that fund is a challenge because it includes so many things that we haven't really been able to break out in ways to have good specific conversations about the cost of operating the Aquaplex versus the rest of that building. We're able to separate out fitness memberships and piece, but there's a story there that we haven't really, because you don't have those things metered separately, that when you combine all those pieces, I know we had questions and Trustee Sierra asked about the Riverplex, but I would say that because our budget can sustain that and because of the value that it brings, and if you look at the per user subsidy at the Riverplex, because of the volume of people who are coming through that facility, that number is not out of line with other things in the book. So some of it is it's a little bit of all those things together, that as we talked about institutional knowledge and expertise and what the market will bear, you're seeing a combination of all of those things when you see those percentages, but they do fall in line with our commitments, I think, pretty nicely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And this is probably frankly an hour-long discussion, which we don't have, but, it seemed to me that, I almost hesitate to say this, but I will anyway. Please, for those of you who are listening, who are dance enthusiasts, please don't suggest I'm saying get rid of dance. However, if there were, part of the philosophy of subsidizing and not philosophizing, or not subsidizing, turns on the question of, is this the type of activity we should be using the public's money on, which is a philosophical question. It's also, but it involves practical questions too. So I guess I would just leave it with this. It seems to me that we should have an ability to say, for each activity in each department, why is it that we are, first of all, how much are we subsidizing this, which we know? Secondly, why are we subsidizing at this percentage? And is, that subsidy consistent with the philosophical reasons we are doing this program, and using the public's tax dollars to do it?
I think that's right. I don't know how many years ago it's been. I think it was pre-COVID. We tried and we started a process where we tried to implement a full-scale cost recovery philosophy, which is what you're talking about, right? And the way that our system is set up and with the volume of things that we offer, there were so many exceptions to the rule that we could justify that a system didn't work. It may be that we're close to a time where we need to revisit that, at least in some spaces. But as you look at that per user subsidy, I do think staff does a fabulous job of prioritizing and trying to put dollars where they should be to have maximum impact.
Tim, can I just mention something so in the course of an education in recreation management, and I know there's a couple other recreation management people here, some of the things that they talk about pertaining to that priority of the subsidy aim at a lot of the younger ages, and part of it is that so that families can grow up in the park district. You aim it so they learn these skills at a young age, so that they learn this is where they come to take part in affordable, but very good recreation opportunities.
So, Emily and Carrie, yesterday we met and we spoke about Riverplex specifically. And again, just to note, there's not going to be anything that we can do or address when it comes to longevity and sustainability within this budget. But I think it's fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong if you two don't agree based on our conversation, that while the Riverplex is performing at a steady rate, there is some opportunity for us to do some things differently to increase the monetary performance of that facility. Would you say that's a safe assumption based on our conversation?
I would say that, clarify, there's certainly opportunity in multiple places potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Is there opportunity at the exact moment that we are fully aware of? No, but we are always open to opportunities for revenue generation in any of the spaces,
Mm-hmm.
Riverplex included.
Right now, the gist of our conversation was, from a staff board level, when we talk about Riverplex, we always talk about it performing fiscally at a fine level, right? One part that we don't always hit on, particularly on the expenditure side, is how some of the maintenance, particularly around our aquatics vertical, does cause some barrier. How would you all suggest as a board that we can start to entertain that conversation about those larger barriers that we may not fully grasp?
I know in yesterday's conversation, we referenced that earlier this year, there was a strategy meeting of the board, a committee meeting where there was information, just historical context relative to Riverplex. It is a facility that is 25 years, over 25 years old now. And so certainly we've had to put a significant amount of capital improvements into it. And, you know, as the fitness world has changed and as Peoria downtown has changed, that building has evolved some. What evolves to next, or how it evolves as things and user groups change. And OSF right now is a tenant, a vibrant tenant in that space. How those things change are unknowns really at this moment, but we're always listening and looking for opportunities for conversation with the board. Certainly strategy meetings, full board meetings, wherever our board president chose to put that conversation on agenda is what staff would
Yeah, I
would
would
adhere to.
support that, because my recollection is at that strategy meeting, we didn't actually talk about the Riverplex Fund, and so we never got it back on an agenda. I know you sent out or am I just not remembering it right?
No, you remember it,
Okay,
and that's
yeah,
exactly why
okay.
I'm mentioning
Yeah,
it.
so if we could just get it back on
Yeah, I think with clear direction about what the goal is, I know that we presented a lot of information about the position of the Riverplex and where
yeah,
it
I'm not
sits.
saying for this
No,
budget.
no,
I'm-
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I would just say that if we can set a goal for what that strategy focus would be, that would help us, because we presented a lot of information and everybody was like, okay, thanks. And we kind of did the same thing, right? And so being specific about our targets and what we want to focus that in on would be very helpful to us so that we give you the right information to make good recommendations.
So bringing this full circle, that's exactly why I mentioned
Yeah,
it now and why I
for me,
talked
just
about it.
going over the original information would be the start for me.
Okay.
Because we never actually went through it. Just, for me, that would perhaps be the starting point.
Absolutely. Now, pivoting to a different topic, and basically what I wanted from that is to create an action item that we'll find someplace to have that Riverplex strategy conversation. Sounds like we're on the same page. When it comes to Riverplex recreational programming, one thing that I didn't see in the recreational offerings is Riverplex Summer Camp. I know that was a hot button issue last year. So are we budgeting to continue the summer camp, and are there any anticipated changes?
Correct. Summer camp is in the budget, in the Riverplex budget, and we are not anticipating any changes except for a slight fee increase. But otherwise, we are proposing still the 10-week camp, I think 40 to 45 kids per week. So it's the same as what we offered in 2024.
Originally, the concern was low utilization. How did it perform this summer?
It's about the same over previous years. We still didn't get the residents around the area. A lot of them are still coming from the people that work downtown. We did do some marketing efforts at some of the local schools in April and May, but we didn't see much of an increase in terms of participants from that area.
Unrelated to budget, but my last question, have we done any outreach to the New Providence Point community right by Riverplex?
No, I do not believe so, but we definitely make sure that's an effort that we'll hit next year for sure going forward.
All right, thank you.
I had a question about well, not a question, just a comment, and for what it's worth. Of course, I'm not crazy to see a subsidy go up, but I think that as long as the Riverplex serves a perfect purpose with providing services to the community and increasing the services to a community, then I don't have a problem with the current subsidy as it continues to, the situation continues to improve. But I would like to see some increase in the programming that allows the public, not just members, but the Peoria Park District residents access to the facility. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Museum fund.
Oh, I'm sorry, I do have more. Yes.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Yes, I do have, I'm sorry, and we just got talking about the Riverplex. And I just have questions concerning data, really, for the most part. So you mentioned the rec and roll at the several parks. Do we have attendance data on any of that?
Yeah, part of our data that we had to collect with the YMCA, just for the grant purposes, we did collect data in terms of like number of participants and number of direct contacts. So we do have that data. We can definitely share with you.
Okay. And oops. The PBD, the Jack Sweeney program, do Park District camps take part in that?
Yes, some of them do. This year we actually increased the number of camps, but only Proctor Center was the only one that was able to come because they have transportation right there, which all of their camps would require a school bus, which is very costly to come twice a week for 4 weeks. But we did actually increase the number of camps that we did outreach with. Angela, we had Boys and Girls Club, or Michael, but Boys and Girls Club, Proctor Center, Southside Catholic, and Friendship House.
Okay, we don't send any other park district. I was really interested in. Just
No,
Park
in
District
the
camps.
biggest barrier there is just the pure cost of a bus. Picking up kids and taking them to Bradley Park is about $300 to $400.
And the baseball, youth baseball program, I saw it's really increased, the enrollment, or at least the attendance. What was the enrollment this year versus last year?
I got that. Just to clarify, are you talking about just youth baseball or T-ball and coach pitch as well?
I'm really looking at the youth baseball that you worked with the Peoria Baseball Association.
Okay. I don't have the exact numbers. I got a nice little grid. I got them sort of together. But I would say that the overall youth baseball probably saw about 20 to 30 kids additional this year, which doesn't seem like a lot, but youth baseball for many years has been on the decline, especially house league.
Right.
And with the support and sponsorship of the Peoria Baseball Association, really using their expertise as coaches and volunteers, they have made a major impact in some of the kids. And this was the first year, again, since COVID, that Proctor Center, we actually took kids from Dream Squared. They didn't have enough to form a team, but we were able to practice at Proctor Center and bring the kids up to participate and play in the games at the stadium on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Right, and I had talked to one of the volunteers there one night, and he said that they were up to 70 kids, though not necessarily 70 kids in one night, but.
Correct. And the way that that program's sort of structured, it's more of a drop-in. So it's not super organized because that's the way I think a lot of kids like. They like to come on the nights that they can come. And then we usually have games on twice a week, and then the practices are sort of hit or miss depending on when they would like to come.
Well, I know the coaches are pretty happy about the attendance, so.
Yeah, and it's been a great partnership. We've been with them now for the last 3 years, and we continue working with them next year.
It's great. And speaking of Dream 2, I saw that they have, the program has an assessment that shows that they are increasing in, I think, was it reading and math skills?
Correct. And I'm going to let Janelle come up and maybe talk a little bit about that. Thanks, Janelle.
Well, really, here's my question. I can cut to the chase quickly, but so is the assessment tool that they use, is it like a third-party accredited test, or do you have testing that is included in the books that you use?
We actually call the schools and ask them for their statistics and compare them with ours.
Okay, oh, well,
Yes.
I'll see.
So we have the accelerator reader that we've added, so we do math and reading every day.
So I know that since we're in United Way right now, they have similar programs that they fund for certain ways, but they are a data-driven organization, and so you have to, like the Moonlight program has graduation, and how many people enter the program, how many they graduate. Well, if you have a data-driven tool, the school district,
Yes.
then
And we have 3 different schools: Southside Christian Academy, Peoria Public Schools, and St. Mark's. And they give us their scores, and we use their scores to compare it with ours.
so it might be worth asking United Way if that's an area that they would be interested in funding. Just tossing that out.
Yeah, so one thing we have to keep in mind is that currently that program is being funded through ICEJA. So we just had to make sure, like, if that funding ever were to go away, that would be another source of revenue that we could
Yes.
use to fund that.
Right.
Yes.
Something to fall back Thank you. So I noticed that on the fees, and actually I had a question of the fees in general, but I know a lot of the day camps are going up, the price of day camps are going up. Is scholarship funding going up also to meet the increase in day camps?
So yes, so I mean, since we reworked the scholarship program, I think that was in 2023, where participants, instead of just getting 2 weeks free for camp, they can get the full summer scholarship. So we have been adjusting our scholarship line to meet that need, and we did, it has gone up, but we have not maxed it out.
Okay, thank you. John Gwynn Pool, are there hours going to going to include any additional weekend? And I ask this because I went to the Riverplex one time, and the Riverplex was closing at 2:00. And I don't believe John Gwynn is open on Saturdays. Is that right? It was 97, 98 degrees in the afternoon. And it just didn't seem, it didn't seem right that a park district would have no pools available except for splash pools in that kind of heat on weekends.
Gwynn is open Monday through Thursday and Saturday, and Fridays are for rentals.
Okay. And so, but they're closed on Saturday and,
They're open on
I
Saturday.
mean, on Friday and Sunday?
Sunday they're closed, and Friday they're open for group rentals.
Okay.
Yeah, which Fridays are rentals, usually for camps. So I know Lakeview Recreation's camp goes there, as well as Carver and a couple other camps.
But camps usually leave around 2, 3 o'clock. Yeah, and so for the heat of the day, for still a good part of the afternoon, and then on Sunday, there's no pool available in the area? Or is Proctor open?
Proctor is not open on Sundays, no. So right now, the only pool that would be open on the weekend is
Do
Gwynn.
we provide we don't provide any additional opportunities for family swimming on Sundays?
We found historically that was not used. And so the last time we offered on a Sunday, it was single digits participation. And so as we allocate our resources across Proctor, Gwynn, and Riverplex pools, we have made the determination not to open on Sundays, but to offer those Saturday hours we were able to add in, and we've seen that be fairly effective. When you have a limited number of lifeguards, right, you have to try to spread those out to maximize access and usage. That's another reason that we do have multiple splash pads available for use, because those are available on outside of those hours and can be used on Sundays if it is a hot day. But actual pool time, to order to maximize the usage, we looked at those numbers, and that's a very thoughtful approach to establishing that calendar, because it does maximize usage and make sure that we're open when people have historically come.
I hope in the future, we will still have pools available and not consider them obsolete. Oh, well, I just hope that we don't consider pools obsolete in this park district at some point.
Tim, or I said Tim, I'm so sorry. The evenings get into me, my apologies. So can you elaborate on that last part when you say you hope the pools don't become obsolete?
Well, we figured to phase them out because we're not seeing attendance in them, and not figuring out how we can get people to the pools.
Mm-hmm.
I think being open 6 days a week in some form is not obsolete. It is not our intent to phase out pools. It is our intent to try to maximize the available resources to support safe usage of pools. And that's having Proctor open and having Gwynn open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with field trips on Friday and Saturdays, and then having Riverplex time as well. I would say to you that is a commitment to pools, and our team and Sue's leadership in order to keep those 3 pools running has been an absolute effort because of the struggle to find lifeguards.
Do we have swimming classes at Gwynn?
Not have swimming classes at Gwynn this summer. They were scheduled with the ebb and flow that we had in aquatic leadership. They pulled all of those lessons and we moved into Riverplex. There are lessons that will be offered at Gwynn this summer, coming up in 25, and they will also have Riverplex.
And what do we charge for lessons at Gwynn?
Well, it would be the same across the board. So if you have a 4 lessons.
Okay, yeah.
I always had to.
I could hear
So
you
a 4
perfectly.
I knew you could. 4 lessons for that would be $32. 8 lesson session would be $64.
I'm just going to say something crazy here and
I might
suggest.
say it
back. Well, I'm known for it.
Sherry,
Have we thought about offering swimming lessons free of charge?
We do.
We do?
Yeah,
Not just
actually, I have a group coming in, a dance and cheer group coming in 2 days in November, 2 days in December, and all the way through April when they leave to go to Hawaii, because they've asked about water safety.
Oh, I'm talking about during the summer.
Yeah. Yeah, we do water
at Gwynn.
safety programs.
Do we do that at Gwynn?
We didn't do any swim lesson programs at Gwynn this last summer.
Right, I mean, but
That
have
would
we
be our
offered them
plan to
free of
do,
charge?
yes.
I will say that we did offer free swim lessons at Proctor Center this year. Working with Janelle's camp, we actually, thanks to Sue and her team, was able to have swim instructors there after the camp, and so kids got to stay after the camps, take swim lessons, and then go home with their parents. So it was a delay, but we did offer free lessons for Proctor Center camp.
Very good. And, I mean, just the idea of growing swimmers in that area where they just might not come because they can't swim.
And I will say too, one of the things that we're actually going to be working on right now, we're in a search for an aquatics manager, which hopefully we'll get one hired here in the next couple months. But part of the ICEJA grant dollars that we do have, we actually do have funding available to put kids through swim lessons at the Riverplex. And so working with Michael and his team, he's actually identified certain after-school programs that are willing to bring kids to the Riverplex, and we would provide free swim lessons for those kids as well. And the nice thing about that is that the agency can provide transportation back and forth during the winter. So it's amazing. It's good stuff.
And what works really well with that kind of a situation is that the agency is together and transports them to the lesson. If we have to rely on sometimes parents getting them there, sometimes they don't always come.
Right. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Very good.
Sue, I have a question.
Yeah.
At Proctor Center, now, you made mention about the swim lessons there. Why can't they do them there?
At Proctor,
Yes. You
they
said
did do
something-
them at Proctor.
Oh, you said there was something, you just made a comment about, he asked you about swim lessons at Proctor and something to the effect.
We didn't
I mean-
offer them at Gwynn this year.
Oh, at Gwynn,
Right,
but they had them at Proctor.
yes.
And Gwynn was the reasoning was?
The reasoning that we had was that the aquatic personnel that we had down there pulled all the lessons off of there because she didn't believe that she had enough staff. And we moved them to the Riverplex where we had staff currently in line. That was just a call on their part.
Now, you recall that Southside Community Center had 100 kids they wanted to teach how to swim. Remember
Yeah,
we
I
brought
believe that was through
Remember we
Michael
brought that forth,
Dixon
and that didn't happen.
and the aquatic person that was that we had hired on.
Well, did anyone else follow back up with them? Because I had a conversation not too long ago about that. Them get, back this coming swim season. Did anyone follow up with Southside?
I don't have that information.
Or can somebody follow up to see, because they wanted those kids to learn how to swim, but no one's never gotten back. I don't know what all the particulars. I remember the situation though. Yeah.
So we originally reached out to Southside. We had things set up, and then so Jerron, the guy that I usually talk with, and Chris, they already had their plans kind of set up. So I worked directly with Jerron and Chris for our after school programs and everything, and they We just never got it basically taken care of, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and that's one of the programs that we can definitely fund through ICEJA. And my guess is that this winter we'll be working with that agency to sort of make sure that those kids do have swim lessons.
Okay, now we will follow up, correct?
We will. I'll make note of that right now.
Yeah, I will follow up as well with Chris and Jerron to make sure that happens.
Okay, because I do get the calls, and I just forgot about it since he brought it up. I
Okay.
just wanted to know what we were doing. That's all. Just, wanted to.
Yeah, there was just a miscommunication there as well.
Okay.
So we'll make sure I get that I'll make sure I get that handled.
And Sundays, we don't do any swimming on Sundays on the south side at all?
We do not.
No families?
And for
interested?
years past, we've tracked that attendance. And actually, several years past, when Trustee Sierra had mentioned that he wanted something in on a weekend, and we chose Saturday. And Saturday turns out to be a very well-attended, depending on the weather. But Sundays don't, because Sundays, they tend to go to cookouts, they tend to go elsewhere than come to the pool. That's what we found always in the past. Now, we could track it again. We could certainly try it again. If you would rather try a Sunday versus a Saturday, we can do that.
Yeah, and we actually have the funding to keep the pool open. So I mean, if that is the direction of the board, that we want to try to shift some Saturdays to Sundays, we can definitely do that. Nothing says that what we have in there, we just have the dollar amount, but we could shift
No, it wasn't my idea to switch. It was add.
to add.
Yeah, 7 days.
Yeah, I don't think adding, we don't have the resources for that, so it'd be a switch, and we know that Saturdays work.
Could we switch one of the weekdays?
We could.
Yeah. So, and Sue, I'm happy that you mentioned that because that's where I was gonna go. At one point, there was a conversation about altering the aquatic schedule, and you all did accommodate for that. That was about 3 years ago now.
Yeah, it gets lost in COVID, so.
Yeah. And mentioning COVID, things are returning back to some form of normality. So I mean, I was wondering where that increase of 50% revenue increase for Gen Aquatic Center was coming from. I didn't know if that was an additional day or what the case may be. But
For the expense?
No, for the revenue. We had a 50% increase in revenue anticipated for 25 for the Aquatic Center.
Yes, it probably was because it was a Summer of Fun Pass.
Got it.
Yes,
Got it.
because there's an extra day on there. We took out Mondays this year, so you lost a day. As they anticipated not enough staff. So
Yeah.
yes, that would increase because of the Summer of Fun Pass also.
Got it. So I mean, I think it'd be worthwhile if we can explore potentially what it looks like modifying the calendar to accommodate for 2 weekend days, or maybe even adjusting. I know the weekdays, they happen during the regular workday hours too. So a lot of the residential family, being a working class neighborhood, I'm sure can't accommodate to get to the facility. So maybe we can talk about in programming how we can get creative with that schedule and test to see if we get more foot traffic.
Yeah, and one of the things you'll want to keep in mind when you're doing that, especially at Gwen, is that if you take a weekday away, then you're also taking a limited amount of camps away, where we will flush them into then 3 days versus 4 days.
Yeah.
But we can try and do those things.
And I appreciate that comment is exactly why, in programming, we just should probably have more discussion about what a modified calendar looks
Yeah.
like.
And maybe you modify it on June, you come on Saturdays, and July, you come on Sundays, with a lot of information and signs to get people to understand what days we're going. But it could work. We can change however we need to change. Additional, we're a little tight. As I say it right today, I think we'll be okay in staff. You haven't heard me say that in a long time. But now, come in March, it may totally change. But as I sit here today, staff is doing very well. And we anticipate that strength of staff to go around to the new summer.
Okay, Sue, now what are we doing with the lifeguards?
Yeah.
Still have a shortage? Are we still, now, I know in past, District 150 helped us somewhat, didn't they? Or did they pay some people to do some training or some sort? Is that how they-
I do the training.
No, I mean, didn't we do something with District 150
Well, we did in the past,
with the
couple
training of the
years
guards?
past. Yeah,
Training
couple
lifeguards.
years past they did. We haven't had anybody in doing that program for the last year.
So are we still short of guards?
Well, like I said, here, as I speak to you today, I believe that the strength of our staff will roll all the way around to the summer, and we should be good. Now, to run 7 days, probably not so good, but to run where we're going to be with 6 days, 3 pools open, I anticipate that we've missed, or we've come over that hill where we should be pretty good. Now, anticipating with kids, that may totally blow up in March, and I'll come back to you and go, we're very short. But as I look at as we came out of the summer and we fell into the fall, we've had really good, strong staff. I've got a good staff. I've got schedules that are, knock on wood, that are being filled. If somebody wants a shift that is being put up, somebody else is picking it up. So we're not overworking everybody so that they're able to then pick up these shifts when they can. That's now. And I anticipate that to follow through. But you're working with kids, and that can change in an hour.
Mr. President, just if I could note something here, and I appreciate this discussion a lot, and I find it fascinating, but I do think that maybe we should schedule sometime during one of our regular meetings, a discussion on our swimming policy, or as Alex said, maybe it starts in programming, I'm not sure, but we were scheduled to go to 7:30 tonight. Actually, I have something scheduled later tonight. I don't know how close we are to getting done with the budget, but I'd like us to get done so we can vote on the budget at our next meeting.
Okay. Okay, I hear you. Sue, one more question, I'm sorry. The Riverplex equipment, the seniors, there was a call I had gotten from about having equipment, oodles or something like that down there.
Oh, yeah, well, that's already been taken care
Have
of.
have they been taken care of now?
Yep.
Because they had called. Okay, I just want to make sure that those
Yep,
have been followed
all
through.
taken care of.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it. All right.
Okay.
On the budget, we do want to get through this, but I also don't want to, I don't want I don't want board members or staff to feel like, they're being rushed or anything. They have questions. I do want your questions answered so that the staff can adequately answer, so I do want to make sure we have that time frame for you to do that. Is there any other questions that anyone have?
I have quite a few questions,
Well,
really.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And
And I want I want every board member to feel free to answer those questions and not feel rushed or forward. That's all I'm saying.
unless we can continue this at the next board
Well,
meeting.
we want to get it done now so that we can keep moving the budget so that when we come to and get it done. So I want everybody's questions answered.
Okay.
Everybody's mind at ease.
Okay,
So go ahead.
that's right. Thank you. So on page 49, the Franciscan Recreation Center, I know that some of the costs have gone up. What does the Regional Office of Education pay in the rental?
I can look that up if you give me a few seconds here, if you want to move to the next question.
Well, I'm just curious, I mean, I don't need the exact amount. I'm just curious, what are they paying for it? Do their costs go up when our costs go up?
Correct. The way that the lease is structured is that we revisit like the utility cost. If the utility costs exceed a certain percentage, then we will go back to them and increase their costs for the lease. I think that's a 5-year lease and that they are actually due for an increase in 2025.
On page 57, and now we're getting into the fees and some of the increases, is one fee I don't understand, and it's Camp Wakanda public rental rates, and I'm not sure the description of the rate. 25 weekend campsite, 125 weekend small cabins, 175 weekend large cabin, $15 with night campsite.
So you're looking at the public rental rates for Camp Wakanda? for the cabins? Okay, so there's different levels of cabins, so that's, and tent sites. So the $25 fee that you're seeing in the 2024 rate, that is a tent site. The 110 fee is a valley cabin, which are smaller. The 175 fee is a ridge cabin, which sleep up to 20. So in 2025, we're proposing that the campsites would be $20 per weekend night, so a Friday night or a Saturday night. The valley cabins, the smaller ones, would be $125 per weekend, so that's a slight increase. The ridge cabins, which don't get used as often, we're proposing that those would stay the same for the weekend rate of $175. The $15 is a discounted rate for camping at a tent site during the week. The $50 per weeknight is a discounted rate for the smaller cabins because those are not used as often during the week, as well as the discount for the larger cabins during the week. So that is intended to drive more rentals during the weekdays when we are not full to capacity like we are on the weekends.
Okay. And at the bottom of the, that same page, fishing, they don't charge a fee this year, right? People have just been coming down there and fishing.
Correct. So Camp Wakanda is a reservation facility. So technically you are supposed to have a reservation at the campground in order to be using the pond. But we figured that this could be a way that others could use the pond if they were not camping, and to kind of capitalize on that a little bit and help to cover any costs of maintenance associated with the pond. Our maintenance costs with the pond are minimal at this time, but they could include things in the future like stocking, or if we had to, treat for invasive species or something like that. We're not doing those things at this time, but the fishing pass was a way to allow people who were not camping in order to use that pond. It's not to say people don't sneak in and use the pond, but it is something that we are just trying to kind of get a handle on.
Well, my real question is, how do you enforce that?
That's a great question. So we were trying to devise ways where we could maybe have like a QR code down by the pond. If there was a ranger on site stopping and talking to people, we usually do stop in and talk to people if we see them out there fishing and just, say hi and introduce ourselves. But just having that mechanism as a way of like, hey, did you know that you can support the mission of Camp Wakanda by paying this fee and also get access to the fishing pond for your household for the year?
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I believe I understand. Jim, I'm sorry, I just have a few more. I'll move through these.
Trustee Montez, if I could just, ROE, that lease agreement is $38,950 a year.
Okay, I moved off the page. Okay. But really, my question was, as the fees go up, and it looks like they have, as our costs have gone up, do our fees increase? And so is it increasing from this year to this year to next year?
And we'll evaluate that at the end of the year. We'll take a 12-month look at the utilities, and then that's when we'll approach them about any kind of increase in 2025.
Thank you. I just have a general question, and actually I get down to golf. I'm getting down to golf here, but in golf, and by the way, Greg, I think you guys have done a fantastic job. In growing the revenue and the users and filling up all the time. I think, in that meeting that was hosted back a couple months ago, I really learned a lot about the job that you guys are doing, and I wanted to congratulate you guys on how you're doing. But I see the fees, and I don't really have that much of a question about with golf fees so much. I noticed that 24 out of 49 fees are being increased.
Correct.
And so pretty close to, it's just about 50% there, huh?
That is correct. So I live in a world where I don't want to ever raise fees, but that is not the reality that we have right now. Expenses are going up on the maintenance side and the operations side. Minimum wage is going up. That's a fee we got to cover. Water is always an issue. Water's continuing to go up in rate. we're using more right now. So these fees that we are adjusting are to cover the extra expense.
So do you have a philosophy about increasing rates? I mean, do you increase them like every year, or do you increase them, you hold back until you can't absorb it anymore?
First 3 years, we did not increase fees in my tenure here. But I know this is a bad word right now, but inflation has happened. And we have a pretty good tax subsidy. Yes, it is only 10%, as Trustee Birchie said, but it's rounded up to close to $500,000, $500,000. If it was 2018 again, when I came in and we were doing 78,000 rounds, okay, I would say, hey, there are more golfers that we can bring in to offset some of this extra expense. We are going to do over 116,000 rounds this year, which is the most we have done in many, many years.
It's tremendous.
So there's not enough golfers to bring in anymore to offset that extra expense.
Okay, I got you. And that,
And if you look, what was it? That meeting that we had, it was a special golf committee meeting that we went over the budget or the fees increases. And I had two charts of our local competitors on the weekday fees and our local competitors on the weekend fees, because a lot of places charge two different fees, weekday fees, weekend fees. Out of the 14 golf courses which was all Central Illinois, basically, all of our competitors, Madison was the cheapest. And I'm going to paraphrase here because I don't exactly have the chart in front of me right now. Newman was the fourth cheapest, and Kellogg 18 was the sixth cheapest. So out of those 14, we're in the lower half of what we're charging our customer base.
Well, I remember a time when golf was the enterprise fund, and it sustained itself pretty well. And then I also remember a time when we were paying over 30%.
Correct.
Of the
And-
operating costs. So getting it down to 10% is.
And there are some real world concerns going forward in the golf, and I think the most major one is water. We have to figure out what we're going to do because water's not going to get any cheaper. And it's hard to offset that cost with just bringing more golfers in. So
As an aside, let me just say that and I think you were there for this meeting, that our golf courses are booked literally from like 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. And it's reached the point, and I only say this, partly fully tongue in cheek, is that there was some thought that maybe we should request the board to reopen Northmore Golf Course. But that's not in the budget for this year.
No.
Okay.
Well, I just want to say, going to that meeting, I learned so much. I mean, I thought I knew a bit about the golf courses, but the things, and they talked about the bonded projects and some of the projects that they have to look at the costs that are coming up. I understand, when I have been explained it like that to me, I have.
And one other thing I just want to
Good
add,
grasp.
remember, the Golf Learning Center, which is going to hopefully be open midsummer, okay? Yes, the enterprise fund, and we got to make sure we separate that because that is not traditional golf. But my reason why I'm so excited for this brings in an extra revenue stream that golf sorely needs right now. We don't have clubhouses where we can do weddings and private parties like a lot of other golf courses have in the area that can offset some of that expense that we are seeing. So we need more revenue centers in golf, and the Golf Learning Center is gonna do that for us.
Look forward to it. We look forward to it.
Thank you all.
Very good. And then just kind of related, I want to ask the general question. And I'm not really sure that there's an answer right now, but I want to ask the question. I looked at all the fees, particularly in recreation, museum and all that. There's a number of pages, I don't know, maybe 20 pages of fees and fee increases. Out of 173 fees, 74 being increased, and I think that's like 42% of all our fees. And I have the same question. Do we have a philosophy? Are we just raising the fees because it seemed, some of them going up $1, some of them going up $25. And do we have a philosophy how that is going to affect our attendance when we raise fees in so many areas? How that affects the attendance, the registration in our programs when we take it across, so many across the board? It just seems like a large percentage of increases. And then what do we expect to see at the end? I mean, we're projecting the revenue, but are we really going to see that revenue if people aren't paying and taking the courses, the programs that we are increasing? Because, you know, people who do this kind of research and have this kind of data and talk about fee increases will tell you that some of these fee increases will affect your attendance for 2 to 3 years. You know, do you raise your fees once and then wait a few years and maybe absorb some of the losses and then raise them up a good deal and spread out the increases over a period of time? Like I say, I don't know if there's an answer. I'd have to get everybody up here and talk about their philosophy and how they would see that. That's how I see it. 42% seems like a lot of increases across the board. So, and we'll just have to see what the impact on the budget is at the end of next year.
You know, I just, it sort of strikes me that you say 42%, and I sort of goes through my mind as they're spreading out to multiple programs the need to increase revenue. So it's not, you're just not focusing it in aquatics, it's spread out more. So, and I know what I heard being said, Christy, about charging, sort of recognizing that maybe they can generate some revenue in the weekdays from the campsites, which we never did before, by lowering that fee. So it seems like staff is looking at both ends of it. So, but it's, thank you for getting that calculation, but
Well,
yeah.
it just seems like a lot across the board, and it's going to affect a lot across the board. It's not just, we're not just looking at one area, and that's my concern.
I think historically we've seen, and there's a document that Alicia went up to grab that didn't make your book, but which you were provided as part of our conversations in September and October, that there is philosophy applied, and it is not the same philosophy in every program. It is focused on things like supply and demand to make sure that we are capturing those dollars where we can. Most of those increases, you're right, they are increases, but they're happening in small chunks as opposed to a large increase every 3 or 4 years that people feel in a different way, right? There's not a sticker shock that happens when you're raising prices 50 cents or $1. I mean, that's what you're seeing in most of those increases. It is thoughtful, and it is trying to honor that people use their disposable income to play with us, and we're trying to make it manageable. But at the same time, we have to manage subsidies and so we can't be the cheapest thing, right? We just can't. We've had the conversation about valuation that people make. That part of the concern when we looked at golf, for example, and being the first, fourth, and sixth cheapest golf courses, is that if you were to survey golfers, they would tell you that our courses are in some of the best shape on that list. They would be in the other end of that. And so people they are getting a product that they aren't paying for. And when you have a supply where people are getting up, there's a guy on the golf committee, God love him, who gets up at midnight, and they take turns to get the tee times because it's so busy. And if they wait until in the morning, the times that they want are gone. And so those are things that people, I mean, it's still very reasonable. We're still in that, if anywhere, we're in the middle of that pack. We have to be able to generate the revenue for the product that we're providing to people.
Any other questions?
That is my questions for tonight. That's my questions for tonight. Thank you.
Anyone
Thank you
else?
all.
Okay. Keep going. Is there a time frame that you guys want to stop? I mean, I set this time for this, I did. But anybody on the board
It was on the thing that it was 5 to 7. I kind of thought we'd get here.
by 7
By 7 is when I kind of planned, but I mean,
on budget? Okay.
President Johnson, if it's fine, I'd like to recommend that we just reconvene at next week's board meeting to complete the remaining of the budget presentation.
I'm the one who raised this earlier. I think it was 7:30, but whatever, we're well past it. How much do we have left?
You have museum, police, non-operating. So 3 more funds, plus then just final commentary about the question that is generally asked of us, what should you look for? So that piece is
Got
handled
about
at the
45
end.
minutes or?
Probably.
Yeah. So I agree with that, Mr. President. I think we want to take our time to go through this, but let me also say that this was one reason, and I know Steve did avail himself of this because I was there, and I know that I saw Reagan and Alex there. I'm sure others did as well, but I appreciate the staff also making itself available earlier this week for several hours to answer questions as well. This is not an easy process, but again, it's 8:15. I know that another trustee has told me that they have to leave as well soon. And as I said, I have a commitment, so.
Now, the next board meeting is at what time?
Next Wednesday, we have scheduled a 5 o'clock strategy meeting. We have a couple of items that we need direction from the board on, and then the meeting will start at 6.
Okay.
There
now-
are regular action items on that. That's a regular board meeting. We do have the budget on there, but there will be other business items as well, unlike tonight.
What committee is before that?
Strategy.
Okay.
I believe we had 3 agenda items that we needed to talk to the board about in advance of the next meeting.
What time is that set for?
5.
I agree. I think too, just, it's late. A lot of us were up late last night. I think I would rather be fresh and start again. If we have, 45 minutes could be easily with our group, an hour. I mean, just realistically, with people asking questions, an hour, hour and a half. And I don't know. I would prefer we continue it when we are all fresh.
Okay, it appears that the board, Reagan, got any comments on it? Now, if there's other questions on next week,
Emily, you don't have to bring everybody back. But I just want to say, on behalf of myself, but I'm sure I speak for all the board members, how much we appreciate everybody taking their time this evening to be here, and the enthusiasm of the presentation that took place. The references to Greek mythology were incredible. Seriously, you always put fun and enjoyment on it that I find very pleasing. So just, again, to you and your staff, and just, I mean, you all put in a lot to be here as long as you were tonight. So thank you to all of you who were here and what you said.
It was really fun to hear all of the people introduce themselves and say what they do and just connect a face to a person too, that we might not normally run into.
and I do want to say that on behalf of the staff, we do appreciate the work that you do.
Yes.
We really do, and the way that you presented today was great. I guess I'm the type that I want to get you done and finished with everything so that we don't have to do as much on the next time. Other years I've been on the board, this is early when it comes to budget. You can say that, So, but because of the board, I'm not trying to keep you. I know you got your family. I have a family also as well. But I do like to get our business done in the ample time. I like to everybody have their minds cleared. I want the questions answered so that you can go on and get it done, and we don't have to do 3 meetings or 4 meetings, but to get it done. That's my look at it. But you guys have done a great job. I pray that the board, on the next meeting, that anything that they have to do, that we will get it done before we get here, because we do have to do a job for the constituents of the city. This is our job. And I do want to make sure that we get everybody answered and we have a successful board budget presentation. But thank you all again.
Could I ask a question?
So, go ahead.
Just in terms of timing, we have a meeting on the 13th, And,
Yes, we have a meeting on the 13th. We're also scheduled to meet on the 20th.
okay, so the goal would be that we adopt the budget in one of those two meetings.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Well, I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank the staff. You know, the questions I ask them because I don't know the answer. And it helps me, it allows me to support the staff better when I have a better handle on the answers. Many thanks.
If you are new on the board, by all means, you do not have to apologize for asking me. I don't want you to feel rushed. I don't want you to feel pressured. I want you to ask the questions that you need so that you will be pleased. So you don't have to offer any, really, you don't. That's what I didn't want. I don't want you to feel like you're pressed. Any one of the board members feel like they're pressed when you have a question. So there was